Chapter 8:18. The meteor shower, which lasted for 10 minutes, destroyed everything within a 10-kilometer radius. The landscape changed dramatically. The ground was riddled with holes, and some areas were already rotten. The ground sank by hundreds of meters. This was the result of the Jiuquan realm of the gods, weakening the contestants' strength to a certain extent. At the same time, the Jiuquan realm of the gods was far stronger than the outside world under the influence of the Jiuquan law. Even so, under the destruction of the 7 stars swallowing magic array, it still caused devastating damage. However, Wei Jinping was the only one who died because he was in the center of the array and took more than 60% of the attack. The other 6 contestants were unharmed. After the 7 stars swallowing magic array disappeared, Magic Blue Yarn's expression turned serious. She was thinking about how to escape later. In the battle with Wei Jinping, Magic Blue Yarn had used up a lot of energy. Her own consumption might be negligible. However, the 10,000 spirit array was almost depleted. She had to replenish it before it could be used again. Huanqing Sha, I didn't expect your attainments in spiritual arrays to have reached such an unimaginable level. What a surprise. Unfortunately, spiritual arrays are consumables. Once you use them, they're gone. Of course, if you've prepared enough 10,000 spiritual arrays, that's also your ability. Let me have a taste of your 10,000 spiritual arrays. Long Zaiqian flew forward and said to Huan Qingsha with a smile. Without waiting for Magic Blue Yarn to reply, Xiong Qiguang had already rushed forward and said coldly, "You want to take turns fighting me? Long Zaiqian, your opponent is me." Long Zaiqian didn't care. He looked at Xiong Qiguang with contempt. "You're not worthy to be my opponent. However, if you want to die, no one will stop you." Xiong Qiguang's expression was calm, but there was a deep sense of fear in his eyes. Let's not talk about other things. Just from the ranking alone, Xiong Qiguang was inferior to Long Zaiqian. Xiong Qiguang was ranked 7th in the Nam Kuan top 10. His actual combat strength might not even reach this rank. After all, Spirit Array Masters were not suited for on-the-spot battles. Instead, they were more suited for setting up traps, ambushes, and strategic deployment. The more powerful a spiritual array was, the more time it would take to set it up. It was almost impossible to release a powerful spiritual array in an instant. The fact that Magic Blue Yarn was able to set up the 7-star swallowing magic array in less than 10 minutes was already unbelievable. Xiong Qiguang was not as good as Magic Blue Yarn. Long Zaiqian was ranked 5th on the prodigy roll of the Jade Clear Great Void Republic. On paper, he was 2 ranks higher than Xiong Qiguang. Furthermore, Long Zaiqian's ranking had just been confirmed not too long ago. In other words, Long Zaiqian's true strength was ranked 5th in the younger generation of the Jade Clear Great Void Republic. Over and over again, anyone with a bit of common sense could tell that Xiong Qiguang was no match for Long Zaiqian. The latter also had a powerful dragon bloodline. He could fight both close and long range. Long Zaiqian also had a bit of black dragon bloodline. The dragon race was the royal family of the demon race, and black dragons were the legitimate royal relatives of the dragon race. Long Zaiqian could transform into a black dragon embryo in a short period of time. His attack power was extremely terrifying. Xiong Qiguang was wary, but he was not afraid. At this point, being afraid was useless. It was better to die than to flee at the last minute. Xiong Qiguang's eyes narrowed. He did not say anything else. The spirit qi in his body exploded, and a terrifying spirit pressure covered the sky. Weak was only relative to the top prodigies. To all the other contestants, Xiong Qiguang was a complete monster. The contestants, dozens of kilometers away, stretched their necks and looked into the distance. The 7-star swallowing demon array had really scared them. The contestants who were close to it all retreated. Qin Fulin and the other 2 saw the dark clouds rolling in the void and retreated without thinking. Brother Fulin, Wang Ling has probably gone to the resurrection point. Should we continue to watch the battle? These freaks are not from the same world as us. We might as well take advantage of this time to hunt. Lu Dan lost the desire to continue watching. He had come here to chase after Wang Ling, but she did not even put him in her eyes. A random stranger had come, and he had been seduced away. Lu Dan was very sullen. However, when he thought of Wang Ling being implicated and sent to the resurrection point, he felt a lot of comfort. Now, Miss Wang should know who was the better choice. Lu Dan was anxious to go to the resurrection point to find Wang Ling. Let's watch a little more. This level of battle is not something that can be seen casually. Maybe we can learn something from it. Chen Fulin looked serious. I also want to watch a little more. Chen Fuji followed. Lu Dan pursed his lips and did not say anything. He could only continue watching. Now that the cultivators of the Enkuan Empire were everywhere, being alone was not a wise choice. The three of them were early-stage void refinement cultivators. They were not weak, and their divine senses were naturally strong. A distance of tens of kilometers was nothing to them. However, they could not sense Wang Ling's aura. This was because when the seven-star swallowing demon array was activated, Li Daochong concentrated his divine sense within a 30-meter radius, forming a wall of divine sense. Wang Ling happened to be within this range. As a result, Chen Fulin and the other two could not sense Wang Ling's aura. As for why they could not see her with the naked eye, it was because the dark clouds triggered by the seven-star swallowing demon array had not dissipated. The dust and smoke left behind by the attack were still there. Wang Ling and Li Daochong's position was just above the void where the dust and clouds were thicker. Therefore, from afar, they could not be seen at all. As the three of them were talking, a strong wave of air rushed towards them. It swept across the sky and earth like a hurricane. It was actually a strong airflow caused by the diffusion of spiritual energy. What a strong spiritual pressure! Chen Fulin exclaimed. It's Xiong Qiguang, our Enkuan's crazy guy. I wonder which unlucky person is going to face him. Chen Fuji said excitedly. Other than Li Daochong and Wang Ling, who were still in the dust and smoke, the other five people, Magic Blue Yarn, Xiong Qiguang, Feng Qichong, Zhongli Qiongchong, and Long Zaiyan, all appeared from the dust and smoke. I think Xiong Qiguang is the unlucky one. As soon as Chen Fulin's voice fell, a disdainful voice came from the side. Turning around, three young cultivators in white robes appeared in the void 100 meters away from the three of them. Their uniform white robes were very eye-catching, and the word myriad mystery was embroidered on their chest. They were the participants of the Qiansong Empire's myriad mystery talisman. It was said that the recent crusade against Enkuan's participants was initiated by them and the Jade Clear military. These three young cultivators had the same cultivation level as Chen Fulin and the other two. They were all in the early stages of the void refinement realm. If not, the three young cultivators in white would have attacked Chen Fulin and the other two long ago. However, it seemed like they could not get away with it, so they did not attack. However, the three of them had already sent out a signal, and reinforcements would arrive soon. By then, it would not be too late to kill the three Enkuan bastards in front of them. If they attacked now, the three young cultivators in white knew that they did not have an overwhelming advantage. They might even have to go to the resurrection point. What they wanted was an overwhelming victory, or else the losses would outweigh the gains. Chen Fulin glanced at the three of them and looked away. Following the principle of not causing trouble, he pretended that he did not hear anything. Lu Dan could not help but mock. If we're talking about unlucky people, then Ghoul from your myriad mystery talisman should be the one. I heard that he was beaten up like a dog and had no idea what happened to him when he went to the safe zone. He's really unlucky. The three young cultivators in white's expression changed. They were so angry that their lungs were about to explode, but they could not refute. That's why all of you Enkuan's people have become street rats. Yes, Ngu was killed, but that person was despicable and shameless. He ambushed Ngu and even used some kind of ecstasy. Otherwise, how could he be Nji's opponent? Just as the three young cultivators in white were speechless, a white light flew over and a female cultivator suddenly appeared. The female cultivator was also wearing a white robe, but compared to the three young cultivators, there were more complicated patterns on it. The female cultivator's status was obviously higher than the three young cultivators. Senior Sister Lu. The three of them greeted the female cultivator in unison. Lu Rian, a 2-star spirit sequencer from the Myriad Mystery Talisman. Her status was not low, and she could be considered a genius. However, compared to the top 10 on the prodigy roll, she was still far behind. When the three young cultivators in whites saw that their reinforcements had arrived, their attitude changed. The way they looked at Chun Fulin and the other two became arrogant. At this moment, Chun Fulin, Chun Fujia, and Lu Dan suddenly felt the atmosphere become tense. Even their breathing became a little irregular. Lu Rian was famous. She was in the middle stage of the Void Refinement realm. Although she was not a monster, her cultivation was already above the three of them. We don't know who's the rat yet. Just as Lu Rian finished speaking, a lazy male voice came from the other side. They saw a young man who looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old. He was holding his head with both hands and had a straw in his mouth. He walked over lazily in the air. Chun Fulin and the other two's eyes lit up. It was as if they had eaten a calming pill. The crisis was resolved in an instant. The person who came was Engun. Other than the Cloud Jade Robe, 9-star Spirit Array, and Ethereal Spirit Brain, the founder of the 4th largest self-cultivation enterprise, Fortune Pharmaceuticals. He was the last disciple of the Fortune Lord, Shimin Xiao. Lu Ruyan's pupil shrank. Her aura weakened by half. Shimin Xiao's age was a mystery. No one knew his actual bone age. However, since he was able to participate in the competition, it meant that his bone age was not over 60. As for whether he was 20, 30, 40, or 50, no one knew. Some things are destined from the beginning. A rat will always be a rat. You can't turn into a cat. Lu Ruyan said coldly. Is that so? Why do you want to turn into a cat? Is that all you have to do? So you're a cat? Shimin Zhao's eyes were half closed. He looked at Lu Ruyan lazily from head to toe. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes. Shimin Xiao, don't be so smug. You'll be crying soon. Lu Ruyan gritted her teeth. Miss, is this how you care about whether I'm crying or laughing? Shimin Xiao smiled lightly. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion interrupted the conversation. A mushroom cloud exploded from the center of the battle. It was a terrifying explosion. A giant black dragon shadow was projected in the sky. It was at least 1,000 feet long. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Then a bright light shone everywhere. It seemed that a terrifying spirit array was triggered. A dragon roar pierced the sky. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion. Xiong Qiguang was enveloped in the light. He was hit by the black dragon and disappeared. Everyone was stunned for a moment. There was a short moment of silence. Ha-ha! A crisp laughter broke the silence. It was Lu Ruyan's vengeful laughter. Shimin Xiao, did you see that? A rat was trampled to death. How pitiful. Lu Ruyan mocked. Chapter 819. The battle between Xiong Qiguang and Long Zaiyan didn't last long before the former was sent to the respawn point. No one expected Xiong Qiguang to be eliminated so quickly. Rowena and the others were suddenly energized as they looked at Shimin Xiao with a mocking expression. Chun Fulin and the other two were shocked as a chill ran down their spines. Was Engun's prodigy really that weak? It shouldn't be. Shimin Xiao didn't show any reaction to Rowena's words as he continued to look lazy. However, Shimin Xiao felt even worse, as if he had eaten a fly. It didn't feel good to be slapped in the face on the spot. Shimin Xiao and Xiong Qiguang had known each other for many years, so he had some confidence in his friend's abilities. Long Zaiqian was indeed stronger than Xiong Qiguang, but he shouldn't have been able to eliminate Xiong Qiguang in just a few moves. The truth was right in front of him, so he had no choice but to believe it. Engun's prodigy is just an undeserved reputation. Xiong Qiguang is ranked 7th in the Nam Kuan top 10, but he couldn't even withstand 3 moves from Long Zaiyan. What a weakling! Rowena continued to mock him. Engun has no one to begin with. The only capable ones are those few female cultivators. As for the men, they're all cowards, a young man in white said. The young man in white spoke with a clear voice, as if he was afraid that no one would be able to hear him. All the contestants nearby heard him. It instantly attracted a round of laughter. Ngun was already the target of public criticism. Regardless of whether he was a contestant from the other two cultivation empires, they all saw Ngun as their public enemy. The contestants from the other three cultivation empires were all opportunistic. They would naturally side with whichever side was stronger. This was human nature. After all, these contestants also hoped to get a good ranking. They didn't think that their chances were high. Now that they saw Qian and Yu King takes it teaming up against Ngun, it was a good thing for them. If they could reduce the number of contestants in Ngun's group, their chances of advancing would greatly increase. Why not? Therefore, when the white-clothed young man said such words, the contestants all laughed in agreement. Moreover, what the white-clothed young man said was not nonsense. It was really the case. Ngun's number 1 Sky Pride was a female cultivator. 6 of the top 10 were female cultivators. This was the complete opposite of Qian and Yu Qing Taishu. They had fewer female cultivators in the top 10, only 3 of them. If one were to expand the scope, the Namkuan top 10 still had more females than males. The ratio of female cultivators in the top 100 was 63%. It seemed like Ngun's men were all relying on women to fight and rely on women to solve everything. Even the Spirit Supremes were the same. Ngun was also a woman. Shimin Xiao was unable to maintain his indolent expression after hearing these words, and he couldn't help but reveal a somewhat cold expression. Battle Zone. Long Zaiqian sent Xiong Qiguang to the respawn point without using his full strength. Even he himself didn't expect the battle to end so quickly. His confidence was off the charts, and the way he looked at Magic Blue Yarn was different from before. His arrogance was evident in his words. Magic Blue Yarn. Xiong Qiguang has already gone to the respawn point. Now that Ngun has no other candidates, it should be your turn now. Long Zaiqian looked at Magic Blue Yarn mockingly. Magic Blue Yarn clenched her teeth, sweat dripping down her forehead. Whether she fought or not, she was destined to embarrass Ngun in front of all the contestants today. After the battle with Wei Jinping, Magic Blue Yarn didn't have much strength left. Even if she was in her best condition, she might not be a match for Long Zaiqian. Moreover, she was at the end of her rope. She couldn't run away either. This was even more embarrassing than being sent to the respawn point. She was in a dilemma. She had no choice but to fight. Just as Magic Blue Yarn was about to fight, 2 rays of light flashed across the sky. At the same time, a clear voice sounded. Long Zaiqian, who said that Ngun has no one. Let me take you on. The 2 rays of light, one blue and one golden, flashed across the sky and stopped in front of the contestants, revealing their true forms. They were a man and a woman. The man wore a blue robe and had a handsome face. His eyes emitted a blue glow, and the spiritual energy on his body seemed to be burning with blue flames. This person was Shan Gudong, ranked 5th in the Nam Kuan top 10. He came from the Shan family, an ancient cultivator family. This time, he represented the ethereal cerebrum in the competition. However, Shan Gudong's cultivation method had nothing to do with the ethereal cerebrum. In Ngun, Shan Gudong was considered one of the most outstanding male cultivators. The only male cultivator above him was Feng Buji, who was ranked 2nd in the Nam Kuan top 10 and belonged to the Cloud Jade Robe. Including Xiong Qiguang, they were the strongest male cultivators in Ngun. The rest were all female cultivators. Together with Shan Gudong was a veiled female cultivator. Her face was covered by a thin layer of gauze, and her face could not be seen clearly. She wore a light red robe, and her aura was restrained, making it almost impossible to sense her presence. However, no one recognized this woman. Even Feng Qichong, who was experienced and knowledgeable, could not see it clearly. He could not help but have some doubts in his eyes. Feng Qichong had no impression of this woman's silhouette at all. It seemed like there was no such person among the strongest female cultivators in Ngun. I was wondering who it was. So it's you, the meat bone. You came at the right time. I'm hungry. I'll eat your meat bone first, then have some dessert, Long Zaiqian said nonchalantly. He was not interested in Shan Gudong at all. Shan Gudong was indeed much stronger than Xiong Qiguang, but Long Zaiqian did not take him seriously. Among the male cultivators in Ngun, other than Feng Buji, Long Zaiqian was not afraid of anyone. Long Zaiqian just fought. I'm afraid it's unfair to fight continuously. After watching for so long, I'm itching for a fight. Shan Gudong, the last time we fought was 10 years ago. When we were men, we were still rookies in Jindan. Just as Long Zaiqian finished speaking, Feng Qichang's voice sounded from the side, and a cyclone rose. Shan Gutong's pupils shrank. He had some confidence against Long Zaiqian, but against Feng Qichang, there was no way he could fight. This guy was a real monster. Not only was his talent high, his battle comprehension was even higher than Yu Qinghe, who was ranked first in the Jade Clear Great Void. Although Long Zaiqian was unwilling, he did not dare to go against Feng Qichang. He pursed his lips and retreated. Feng Qichang's figure flashed and appeared in front of Shan Gudong. Shan Gutong's heart trembled, but he had no choice but to fight. The contestants watching from afar could see that Feng Qichang was going to fight. Everyone looked at Shan Gudong sympathetically. In the entire spirit realm, other than the three heavenly prides, who else could be Feng Qichang's opponent? The answer was no one. Facing Feng Qichang, Shan Gudong swallowed his saliva with difficulty, and there was fear in his eyes. But Feng Qichang reached out one hand. Golden lightning flashed on his palm, as if space was being torn apart. A golden spear revealed its true form in the lightning. The demon sealing golden lightning spear. A low-grade immortalization magic treasure. Golden lightning was a type of heavenly lightning. It was a natural counter to all living beings in the Hades. Shan Gudong wanted to cry, but it was too late. He could not help but look at the resurrection point. Shan Gutong's divine will moved, and an inconspicuous oil lamp appeared in his hand. 2 blue jade stones floated out. With a bang, the 2 jade stones ignited with blue flames. The Shan family was the guardian of the ancient heavenly star Fire Seed. When Shan Gutong's spiritual meridian awakened, he had already absorbed the heavenly star Fire Seed. Once the heavenly star fire appeared, it would burn heaven and earth. The divine cave oil lamp was rumored to have come from an immortal's cave abode. It was said that the immortals used it, and it was an excellent item to seal the heavenly star fire. A top-grade heavenly mystic magic treasure. The 2 jade stones were heavenly star fire stones. When they collided, they would explode with heavenly star fire. A top-grade heavenly mystic magic treasure. The 2 of them took out their natal magic treasures. The entire void was dazzled. The contestants watching from dozens of kilometers away were almost unable to open their eyes. One side was golden lightning, the other was heavenly star fire. Both sides were extremely domineering. The spiritual pressure of both sides was equally terrifying. For a moment, Mars collided with Earth. Shan Gudong, I'm ranked slightly higher than you. I won't bully you. I'll let you make 3 moves. Come at me. Feng Qichang said loudly. F*CK. Shan Gudong cried out in his heart. His eyes narrowed. Feng Qichang clearly did not put him in his eyes. In a battle between cultivators, it was extremely important to seize the initiative. Although he was being looked down upon, Shan Gudong did not refute. He narrowed his eyes. I'll do as you say. Take this. Chapter 820. Before Shan Gudong finished his words, he had already made a move, and 2 pieces of true fire jade flew out of his hands. He did not seem to use any strength, but the 2 pieces of jade flew through the air like meteors, with the momentum of a rainbow. The speed was so fast that it was hard to see with the naked eye. The 2 pieces of jade hit Feng Qichang at the same time. Feng Qichang didn't dodge or block. He just floated in the air, and the spiritual gang around his body flashed with fierce electric sparks. Li Daochong couldn't help but look at Feng Qichang a few more times. The state of this guy releasing spiritual gang was really similar to his. At the moment when the 2 pieces of jade collided, Feng Qichang's face condensed, and his spirit became violent. He forcibly controlled the 2 pieces of jade flying at high speed and suspended them in the void 3 meters in front of him. Shan Gudong's eyes flashed with horror. One of his strongest magical powers, mutual destruction, was suppressed by Feng Qichong with spiritual gang. Shan Gudong couldn't help but feel a chill on his back, and a sense of powerlessness emerged from the bottom of his heart. However, this feeling was fleeting. Anyway, he was one of the top people of the younger generation in the spiritual world of the human realm. The battle had just begun, and Shan Gudong was not so cowardly. He raised his hands, fiercely put them together, and shouted with full breath. Mutual destruction, explode. The two pieces of jade that were controlled rotated fiercely, and the fierce friction made the jade itself constantly burst into sparks. Feng Qichong's eyes were startled, and he shouted softly, "Come on, meat bone, I underestimated you." As soon as the voice fell, the two pieces of jade that were rotating to the extreme burst into sparks of true fire, igniting Feng Qichong's spiritual gang, and he got rid of the control in an instant. Boom! The two pieces of jade collided with each other, and a group of heavenly star, true fire burst out, bursting out flames that could burn the sky. Feng Qichong was swallowed whole. The contestants watching in the distance opened their eyes wide and looked at this scene in surprise. No one expected that Shan Gudong could break Feng Qichong's control and counter it. A light smile appeared on Shan Gudong's face. Feng Qichong thought too highly of himself, so much so that he was overconfident. He actually allowed the true fire jade stone to be so close to him. True fire was the heavenly fire, on the same level as the heavenly thunder. No matter how talented you were, you wouldn't be able to withstand the refinement of true fire. Aha! Feng Qichong, giving me 3 moves is good. Shan Gudong could not help but mutter to himself. Crack! Crack! The true fire that engulfed Feng Qichong suddenly exploded with golden lightning from the inside out. With a buzzing sound, the golden lightning engulfed the real fire in an instant. The raging real fire disappeared as if it had been eaten by a fire-devouring beast. What? Before Shan Gudong could feel proud of himself, his expression froze. He looked at the unscathed Feng Qichong in astonishment. He was completely dumbfounded. 1 move over. Flabone, make your second move. Feng Qichong held the demon-sealing golden lightning spear with a calm expression. He did not look like he'd been burned by the real fire at all. Not even a single hair was harmed. While Shan Gudong was shocked, the immortal cave oil lamp floating beside him flew up into the sky and became bigger and bigger. Finally, it turned into a huge lamp that was 30 meters tall. The lamp cover was opened, and the mouth of the lamp was facing downwards. The heavenly star domain immediately enveloped Feng Qichong. Immediately after, Shan Gudong shot out a circle of light from his hand into the oil lamp. Pung! The immortal cave oil lamp was ignited, and terrifying real fire spewed out from within. The flames were like waves, surging towards Feng Qichong. Dong! Almost at the same time, Feng Qichong held the demon-sealing golden lightning spear in front of him and smashed down heavily. The void seemed to be solid, and the end of the spear seemed to have hit the ground, making a muffled sound. The space seemed to have cracked. Kacha! Shan Gudong groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. The heavenly star domain was directly shattered by Feng Qichong's smash. It was broken so simply and violently. Hiss! Magic Blue Yarn gasped and looked at Feng Qichong in shock. She couldn't calm down the waves in her heart. The domain with the power of law was broken just like that. How was it possible? The real fire spewed out by the immortal cave oil lamp was forcefully blocked more than 10 meters away from Feng Qichong. It couldn't get close at all. After breaking the domain, the real fire alone couldn't even break through Feng Qichong's spiritual highland. For the vast majority of cultivators, true fire was fatal even without any support. Needless to say, the creatures of the Hades would be annihilated in an instant. The golden lightning emitted from the demon-sealing golden lightning spear soon suppressed the real fire and sent it back into the immortal cave oil lamp. Feng Qichong stood in the air and looked at Shan Gudong seriously. The second move is over. The third move is over. Make your move. Feng Qichang's motionless attitude made everyone's heart tremble. It was as if all attacks were futile against him. Even Long Zaiyin and Zhongli Qiongchang were shocked. They didn't expect Feng Qichang to be so strong. They couldn't help but secretly rejoice that Feng Qichang was on their side and not their opponent. Having such an opponent was simply a nightmare. Shan Gudong was ranked 5th on the prodigy list, but in front of Feng Qichang he was like a child. Not to mention that his punch had no lethality, it couldn't even scratch an itch. Damn it. Shan Gudong cursed unwillingly, but it seemed that this was all he could do. The rebound of the domain being broken injured Shan Gudong's primordial spirit and almost sent him to the resurrection point. With his primordial spirit injured, his vitality was greatly reduced. Shan Gudong made 2 moves and didn't hurt his opponent, but his strength was greatly reduced. How could he make the 3rd move? What? No more moves? If not, then kill yourself. Feng Qichang couldn't help but ask when he saw Shan Gudong's lack of reaction. These words were like an arrow that shot into Shan Gudong's heart, causing his anger to surge. Heavenly meteor fire. Shan Gudong roared. The true fire jade flew towards the immortal cave oil lamp. The 2 pieces of jade collided violently, sending sparks flying into the oil lamp. Originally, the true fire in the immortal cave oil lamp was floating in the center, and the wick at the bottom was not lit. Now, the sparks from the true fire jade flew into the lamp, igniting the wick. Pung! The flame in the oil lamp instantly grew stronger. Shan Gudong clenched his fist, and the flame inside flew out and landed on top of his head. 3 flowers at one's prominence. Heavenly meteor fall. Veins bulged all over Shan Gudong's body, and his face was ferocious. He hadn't fully comprehended this divine ability. Not only was he not familiar with it, but his cultivation wasn't enough to use it. There was only one consequence of forcefully using it, and that was to destroy everything. The consequence of Shan Gudong forcefully using it was to burn his primordial spirit. Although the primordial spirit wouldn't really be burned in the Jiuquan God realm, the feeling of the soul was exactly the same as in the real world, and the pain of the soul burning was even more intense. Shan Gudong roared, and his primordial spirit was completely burned. A beam of star fire shot out from the oil lamp. Compared to the previous 2 moves, the power this time was much weaker. However, Feng Qichang's eyes flashed. He raised the demon-sealing golden lightning spear for the first time, and his expression was solemn. Feng Qichang's aura was completely different from before. With a shake of his wrist, the spear light pierced through the air like a dragon leaping out. Zong! It brought along golden lightning. A golden spear light shot out. Not far away, Li Daocheng's eyes focused, and a trace of excitement rose in his heart. With a buzzing sound, the spear light and the star fire collided. In an instant, the star fire was annihilated, and the spear light swept past. Shan Gudong's eyes widened as he saw the spear light rushing towards him. Then it dissipated in the air and went to the resurrection point. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 821. Feng Qichang was able to defeat Shan Gudong, who was ranked 5th in the Nam Kuan top 10, with only a passive defense. His cultivation was beyond everyone's imagination. They knew he was strong, but they didn't know he was this strong. Shan Gudong's strength was definitely among the top in the human realm, but he wasn't even qualified to make Feng Qichang fight him. Everyone, including Long Zaiyin and Zhongli Qiongchang, looked at Feng Qichang in shock. The problem was, Feng Qichang was already so strong, but he was only ranked 2nd in the Jade, Clear Great Void Republic's prodigy role. Then how strong was Yu Qinghe, who was ranked 1st? The contestants watching from afar felt a sense of helplessness. Feng Qichang put away the demon-sealing golden lightning spear and stood with his hands behind his back. He glanced at magic blue yarn and the unfamiliar woman, then returned to his original position. "Brother Feng, you're not going to fight anymore?" Long Zaiqian asked curiously. "No, one battle is enough. You can go next," Feng Qichang said calmly. "Okay." Long Zaiqian smiled and flew up to magic blue yarn. Come, it's our turn. Magic Blue Yarn's expression was serious. Just as she was about to speak, the unfamiliar woman with a veil said, "Let me." Magic Blue Yarn glanced at the woman and nodded slightly. The veiled woman's aura didn't change. Her figure flashed and appeared in front of Long Zaiqian. "Miss, I'll give you a word of advice. Don't try to be brave. It won't do you any good," Long Zaiqian said seriously. "Cut the crap. Attack," the unfamiliar woman said coldly. "Huh?" Li Daocheng's eyes moved slightly. He touched his chin. That unfamiliar woman's tone sounded familiar. Li Daocheng's divine sense moved, and a light smile appeared on his face. So was her. Long Zaiqian narrowed his eyes, and his expression turned cold. How dare nobody talk to him like that? "As you wish." Long Zaiqian's calm voice was filled with murderous intent, and the spiritual energy around him surged out like a rolling river. The black dragon projection covered an area of several dozen kilometers, as if a dragon god had descended upon the world. The masked woman didn't want to be outdone. She released her aura. Although she didn't have a Dharma idol shadow, her whole body was burning with golden flames. Its color was almost exactly the same as Feng Qichang's golden lightning, but its attributes were completely different. One was golden lightning, while the other was golden flames. The golden flames were like a sea of clouds that covered the sky, igniting the void. On one side was the shadow of a black dragon, while on the other side was the sky filled with golden flames. Feng Qichang and Zhongli Qiangshan's expressions changed slightly. They were both surprised. They didn't expect the masked woman to be able to compete with Long Zaiqian in terms of aura. It was impossible to say that this woman was a nobody. However, no matter how good Feng Qichang's eyesight was, he still couldn't figure out who she was. Among all the people present, except for Li Daocheng, no one could figure out who she was. It was as if this woman had appeared out of thin air. Her aura exploded, and her spiritual pressure covered an area of several hundred kilometers. However, everyone, including Feng Qichang, was unfamiliar with this powerful aura. Long Zaiqian's eyes flashed with a black light, and his heart trembled slightly. He didn't expect this masked woman to have such a powerful spiritual pressure field. It was beyond his expectations. "Interesting." Long Zaiqian licked his lips and showed a bloodthirsty look. Two horns appeared on his forehead, and black scales appeared on his body. He didn't intend to hold back. The best way to deal with an unfamiliar strong opponent was to end the battle quickly. "Black dragon worships the sky, kill," Long Zaiqian shouted, and a dragon head blade appeared out of thin air, turning into a black dragon and slashing at the masked woman. Golden flames swallows the sky. With a delicate shout, the golden flames rolled up like a tsunami and pounced on Long Zaiqian. Both sides made their moves and collided with each other. The black dragon plunged into the waves of fire. For a moment, the black dragon was twisting and turning in the waves of fire in the void. It jumped out of the waves of fire for a while, and then plunged into the waves of fire and disappeared. The dragon's roar kept coming from the void, and the sea of fire burst out with a deafening buzzing sound. Every sound indicated the endless vitality of the sea of fire, as if it would never be extinguished. Finally, with a dragon's roar, the black dragon swallowed the sea of fire. Long Zaiqian's black dragon worships the sky is so powerful. Did he win? Some of the participants who were watching from afar exclaimed. However, as soon as the voice fell, the black dragon rolled in pain, and the golden flames burned the black dragon from the inside out. However, the golden flames also dissipated at the last moment. They were evenly matched in one move. "Underestimated you. Miss, can you tell me your name?" Long Zaiqian stared at the veiled female cultivator and said loudly, "If you want to fight, then fight. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The veiled female cultivator said impatiently. Long Zaiqian was speechless, and the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. If he didn't chop this little girl up today, he wouldn't be able to vent the resentment in his heart. In the blink of an eye, the veiled female cultivator had already made her move. A thumb-sized golden ball of light spun, carrying golden flames. Whoosh! With a sharp sound, the golden ball of fire shot toward Long Zetian. Clang! Long Zetian blocked with the dragon saber in his hand, and with a crisp sound of metal colliding, he felt his hand go slightly numb. In that instant, countless golden granules condensed and formed, surrounding Long Zetian in all directions. What kind of move is this? Zhongli Qiongchang looked confused. She had never seen or even heard of any of the magical powers that the veiled female cultivator used. Feng Qichang's eyes glowed, and his divine thoughts ran quickly, searching for the relevant records of the move in front of him in his memory, but he found nothing. Golden flames. What kind of fire is it? Feng Qichang seemed to think of something, but he wasn't sure, so he continued to ask. There are 3 kinds of golden flames. The 5 elements golden flames are a kind of spiritual fire. The Samadhi golden flames are a kind of true fire, formed by the fusion of the 3 spiritual fires, and the last kind is more special. Zhongli Qiongchang's beautiful eyes moved. What's the other kind? Feng Qichang saw Zhongli Qiongchang stop and asked. The other kind is the fire that the ancient divine beast, the phoenix, erupts when it is reborn, also known as the nirvana true fire. Zhongli Qiongchang continued to answer. Phoenix nirvana. Feng Qichang thought of something and murmured. His eyes flashed. Could this girl be from the Yin family with the phoenix bloodline? Zhongli Qiongchang Liu Mei was slightly moved and asked doubtfully. The Yin family inherited the phoenix bloodline. Although they are strong and have always been a prosperous family in Nankoan, they have never stepped into the top 10 of Nam Koan top 10. The strongest of this generation, Yin Feng, is only in the 40s. A few months before the competition, Yin Feng even fought with someone, and her strength was not much different from her previous ranking. The girl in front of us is much stronger than Yin Feng. Long Zetian is a top genius ranked 4th on the Qiansong Heaven's Chosen list. If she really is Yin Feng, she wouldn't even be able to take one hit. After listening to Zhongli Qiongchang's analysis, Feng Qichang didn't waver in his speculation. Instead, his pair of golden-brown eyes flashed with even more certainty. She is Yin Feng. What? Zhongli Qiongchang's eyes were filled with shock. If that was the case, then wouldn't there be another strong opponent in the competition for the second female cultivator? But how did Yin Feng increase her strength so much in such a short time? Zhongli Qiongchang couldn't help but bite her lower lip. It seemed that she had misjudged the situation. While the two were talking, Long Zetian and the masked girl had already exchanged more than 10 blows. Both sides went back and forth, each showing off their skills. Long Zetian obviously held back his strength. From the beginning, he wanted to end the battle quickly, but now he was testing the waters. Once an expert made a move, one would know whether or not they were strong. When the two attacks collided, Long Zetian knew that this masked girl wasn't an opponent that he could take down in a few moves. If he wasn't careful, he could fall and be killed by his opponent. That would be too embarrassing. Long Zetian wasn't afraid of losing, but he couldn't lose to a nobody. The masked girl was terrifyingly calm. No matter what kind of skills Long Zetian used, she was able to dissolve them all. The power of the golden fire was incredible. All the skills that the masked girl used were essentially different forms of the golden fire. It seemed that other than controlling the golden fire, the masked girl didn't have any other skills. But even though it seemed like a simple skill, it couldn't be broken. Long Zetian's dragon mouth blade was blocked by the golden fire. Not only that, but the surface of the blade, which was a top-grade mysterious sky treasure made of gung armor essence iron, was melting under the continuous burning of the golden fire. Long Zetian looked at the melting dragon mouth blade and felt his heart bleed. This treasure was very valuable, and he had spent a lot of high-grade spirit stones. If he wanted to restore it to its original state, he would have to spend at least tens of millions of high-grade spirit stones. True fire skills had a restraining effect on most treasures. After all treasures were made of different kinds of spirit fires and true fires. Fortunately, this was the Jiushuan realm of the gods. Otherwise, the loss would be great. But even so, the dragon mouth blade was useless against his opponent, so there was no need to use it. Long Zaiqian put away the blade and put his palms together. His fingers were bent, and his fingertips were slightly open, looking like a dragon with its mouth open. Swimming dragon, water break. Roar. With a dragon's roar, a black liquid dragon jumped out of Long Zaiqian's palms. Like a column of water spurting out from an overpressured state, it rushed towards the veiled female cultivator. Fire lotus bloom. The masked girl fiddled with her fingers, and a golden light flashed. A golden fire lotus condensed and bloomed in the blink of an eye. However, the seemingly beautiful golden fire lotus turned into a man-eating giant flower in the blink of an eye. Its blooming petals turned into a giant mouth with raging flames. It swallowed the oncoming black water dragon in one gulp, leaving not even a drop of water behind. What? Long Zaiqian's eyes widened. He looked at the scene in disbelief. The first move of the Dragon Emperor technique was broken just like that. Black dragon soars to the sky storm. Long Zaiqian was shocked and hurriedly performed the second move. For a moment, a strong wind blew. A black whirlwind dragon broke through the air and collided with the golden fire lotus. Boom! Waves of fire rose and the wind raged. Long Zaiqian was sent flying a few kilometers. The masked girl was not much better. She was also sent flying a few kilometers away. They seemed to be evenly matched. In fact, Long Zaiqian lost by one move. He had to perform 2 moves at the same time to tie with his opponent. Damn it! Long Zaiqian cursed. With a swoosh, he flew back to his original position. The masked girl was 1 step ahead of him. Her forehead and eyebrows were exposed. There was no change in her expression. Her eyes were as calm as water. In terms of momentum, Long Zaiqian was also at a disadvantage. The arrogance on Long Zaiqian's face had long disappeared. He looked at the masked girl in front of him with fear. Although the Dragon Emperor technique still had more powerful moves, Long Zaiqian did not want to expose all his trump cards so soon. The competition was still far from over. Long Zaiqian's hands, which were hanging by his side, suddenly spread open. Buzz! 3 black swords appeared around him. 2 black daggers appeared in his hands. At the same time, the black scales on Long Zaiqian's body became more prosperous. He no longer looked like a human. He looked more like a humanoid monster. The 2 horns on his forehead extended several inches. The white of his eyes turned yellow. His pupils turned from round to slender oval. The whole process was completed in an instant. Long Zaiqian did not even stop flying. He rushed toward the masked girl. The latter was as light as a breeze. Apart from the golden flames around her, there was not much change. A 7-colored whip appeared in each of her hands. Long Zaiqian's 3 black swords shot out like a rainbow. They shot toward the masked girl like black lightning. Buzz! Pa! The masked girl casually swung one of the 7-colored whips in her hand. The space seemed to crack. The 3 black swords were blocked. Long Zaiqian appeared behind the masked girl with 2 daggers in his hands. He stabbed at the girl's back with 2 black lights. This diversionary tactic was about to succeed. The masked girl's other 7-colored whip automatically swept backward as if it had grown eyes. Long Zaiqian's wrists were coiled. Golden flames spread from the 7-colored whip to Long Zaiqian's arms. Long Zaiqian's eyes narrowed. He loosened his hands. Ignoring the golden flames burning his arms, he quickly shot out the 2 daggers and continued to stab the masked girl's back. Injury for injury. This kind of desperate fighting style was the most troublesome. The masked female cultivator's calm brows furrowed slightly. The 2 daggers pierced right through the middle of his back. Before Long Zaiqian could raise the corner of his mouth, the masked girl's figure gradually dissipated. The daggers had only pierced through a shadow. The 7-colored whip coiled around Long Zaiqian's wrists loosened. However, he grabbed it. So what if it's true fire? The black dragon scale armor is the strongest dragon armor. It's comparable to a defensive magic treasure. Why would it fear true fire? After saying that, Long Zaiqian let the golden flames on the 7-colored whip grab it tightly. The masked girl dodged and disappeared. Wang Ling, who had been watching the fierce battle from beside Li Daochong, had sweaty hands. A battle of this level was like a fight between immortals to her. Where is she? Wang Ling did not know where the masked girl went. She looked around, but could not find her shadow. She could not help but feel puzzled. Behind you, Li Daochong said unhurriedly. Wang Ling turned her head and saw the masked female cultivator floating less than 10 meters behind her in the void. She was immediately startled. Li Daochong, how did you know? Wang Ling swallowed her saliva. I guessed. Li Daochong replied casually. You can even guess that? You're really a god. Wang Ling sighed. Li Daochong shrugged and didn't comment. He looked at the masked woman with a smile in his eyes. The latter also looked at Li Daochong. Their eyes met, and they seemed to see something in each other's eyes. Black dragon, sacrificial heaven kill. Long Zaiqian roared from below. 3 black flying sword with black flames came crashing down. Wang Ling looked at the black flames coming at her like an avalanche and turned pale with fright. The masked girl floated there as steadily as Mount Tai. It was as if she did not see Long Zaiqian's attack. She just looked at Li Daochong indifferently. Li Daochong pursed his lips. The corner of his eyes flashed. Chapter 822. The masked female cultivator seemed to have sensed that Li Daochong was about to make a move, and her eyes were filled with anticipation. However, in the next moment, Li Daochong's aura suddenly disappeared, and the black wave of fire swept past his position. He was long gone. The masked female cultivator was shocked. She narrowly avoided the attack of the fire wave, and during the process, she did not forget to look for Li Daochong. However, there was still a figure there. Dozens of kilometers away, Wang Ling's face was pale, and she was gasping for breath, her heart beating violently. She thought she was going to die and had to go to the resurrection point. But in the blink of an eye, she had teleported to a safe area dozens of kilometers away. Wang Ling had no idea what had happened just now. After a long while, Wang Ling finally caught her breath. Her breathing gradually calmed down, and her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt as she raised her wrist and looked at it. There was a clear handprint on her wrist, which was slightly red, as if someone had grabbed her. Only then did Wang Ling realize that she had been saved. The other party was so fast that she had no time to react. Suddenly, Wang Ling raised her head and looked at the center of the battle. Then, she sighed and muttered to herself, I wonder if Li Daochong was saved by the mysterious person. At this moment, Li Daochong was already tens of thousands of kilometers away, and his speed was extremely terrifying when he used the 1,000-sound escape at full strength. Now that he had reached 1,000th of the speed of light, he could escape 300 kilometers in a second. Even if the old fusion stage demon used his escape technique to the maximum, he might not be able to reach such a terrifying speed. Li Daochong had no intention of getting involved in the dispute from the beginning. He just wanted to understand the current situation of the competition and the strength of the true monsters in the spirit world of the human realm. The most important thing for him now was to find the silver bottle. Therefore, when the masked female cultivator wanted to force Li Daochong to make a move, he immediately flew away. During the process of watching the battle, Li Daochong separated dozens of souls to search the 5th imperial capital, but he did not find any trace of the silver bottle. Since he did not want to watch the battle in peace, there was no need to continue staying. Thus, Li Daochong took advantage of the situation and headed towards his next destination, Imperial Capital Number 4, saving Wang Ling along the way. There was no sign of the silver bottle in the 5th and 6th cities. There were still 8 imperial capitals left to search. With the experience of crossing the imperial capital for the first time, Li Daochong was no longer a blind man who had to cross the river by feeling the stones. He had a rough idea of the distance in his heart. Along the way, Li Daochong did not rush. Instead, he hunted as he traveled. Whenever he sensed a powerful Jiushuan netherworld item, Li Daochong would hunt it down. Battle achievements were no longer important to Li Daochong, but it was necessary to collect information on different netherworld items and accumulate combat experience. By the time Li Daochong arrived at the number 4 imperial capital, it took him more than twice as long to reach the number 5 imperial capital from the number 6 imperial capital. It took them more than 10 days to arrive at capital number 4. After finding a secluded place, Li Daochong divided dozens of souls and began to search for traces of the silver bottle. One day passed, and he found nothing. It was as if the silver bottle had never appeared in the Jiuquan realm of the gods. After retrieving all of his souls, Li Daochong slowly opened his pitch-black starry eyes, which were filled with confusion and confusion. Could it be that the silver bottle had encountered some mishap when it entered the Jiuquan realm of the gods and did not enter the Jiuquan realm of the gods? Li Daochong and the silver bottle had grown up together. They were more familiar with each other than anyone else. Perhaps they could not reach the magical state of telepathy, but their sensitivity to each other's aura was far greater than that of other people's. Even the slightest trace of aura could not escape from each other's senses. However, no matter how hard Li Daochong searched, he could not find any trace of the silver bottle. This made Li Daochong feel that it was strange. There were also several battles taking place around capital number 4. Li Daochong was no longer in the mood to watch the battles. After searching for a while, Li Daochong flew towards capital number 3. For some reason, the distance between capital number 4 and capital number 3 was further than the distance between the first 3. Li Daochong was not distracted. He continued to hunt as he traveled. During this time, he killed at least thousands of Jiuquan netherworld creatures. However, these netherworld creatures did not give much battle points. Even the powerful Jiuquan netherworld creatures did not give as much battle points as killing contestants. Time continued to pass. More than 20 days had passed. 1.5 months had passed since Li Daochong left capital number 6. 8.5 months had passed since the first round of the test. In another 3.5 months, the first round of the test would be over. Finally, on the 25th day after leaving capital number 4, Li Daochong arrived at capital number 3's hunting zone. During Li Daochong's journey, the hunting space for the contestants from the Enchantment Empire was further reduced. All non-Enchantment contestants quietly reached a consensus to attack the contestants from the Enchantment Empire first. At the same time, the top 20 sky prides from the Qinsong Empire and the Yuqing Taishi Republic were all looking for a contestant called Li Daochong. They had all received an order. Killing Li Daochong would give them a great reward from the talisman of 10,000 wonders. The reward would be doubled if they killed him twice. The talisman of 10,000 wonders promised that as long as they killed him once, the reward would be given immediately. There was no need to wait until the end of the competition. Li Daochong, who had been on his way, did not know that he had become the target of public criticism. Capital number 3's hunting zone was 3 times larger than capital number 4, 5, and 6. The number of contestants here was much more than capital number 4, 5, and 6. Capital number 3 seemed to be an even bigger competition zone. Li Daochong did not know why it was arranged this way. However, the larger the hunting zone, the more difficult the search would be, and the longer the search would take. Due to the high density of participants near the third imperial capital, Li Daochong was unable to find a suitable quiet place for a while. Even in the depths of the valley, there were many contestants hunting. Li Daochong searched for half a day and finally found a deserted place in the depths of a swamp filled with miasma. The number of contestants within a radius of tens of kilometers decreased drastically. Li Daochong was a little confused at first, but he soon sensed an extremely well-hidden dark qi from the Jiuquan. There was something strange in the swamp. Li Daochong hovered in the air above the swamp. The mist around him was hazy, and the mud below him occasionally bubbled. His ruptured mud robe spewed out a pungent miasma. At the same time, a thick gray mist rose. Combined with all kinds of strange dead trees growing around him, the overall environment was extremely gloomy and terrifying. There seemed to be countless dark ghosts hidden in the depths of the mist. They could jump out at any time to give him a scare. Li Daochong spread out his divine will, and a faint smile appeared on his face. No one came here. It was not that there were no dark creatures to hunt here. It was just that there were too many of them. Contestants of Ng's level would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they came here. Li Daochong looked at the swamp below him and touched his chin. He said in surprise, "Even such ferocious Hades beasts can appear here. The Jiuquan spirit's supremacy is indeed an immortal." Li Daochong spread out his divine will and detected the Jiuquan dark qi that was not weaker than a demon king. At the same time, he sensed a strong sense of weakness. If he guessed correctly, there was a dark king-level ferocious beast hidden in the swamp. At the same time, there were hundreds of giant miasma monsters in the swamp. Poof! Just as Li Daochong was concentrating, a dark red tentacle suddenly shot out from the swamp behind him. It was like the tentacle of a giant octopus, and it was full of barbed suction cups. It launched a sneak attack from behind and swept toward Li Daochong. Chapter 823. Li Daochong did not turn around. He looked to the side, and his lips curled up slightly as a purple light flashed. The giant tentacle that was swiftly swatting towards him was instantly cut in half. Crash! The tentacle that was more than 10 meters long fell into the swamp, splashing up muddy waves. Immediately, the swamp churned violently. A huge creature was twisting in pain below. A few seconds later, a huge creature came out of the swamp. Other than its black color, it was no different from an octopus. It was clearly a black octopus, but its body was much larger. Its head was more than 30 meters in diameter. This was the giant miasma monster that was born and bred in the Netherworld Sea region. It could devour almost all spiritual beings. Its appetite was shockingly large, and it was known as the gluttonous beast of the Hades. Its strength was similar to a low-level demon general, but its actual combat strength was stronger, especially its defense. In addition, it had 15 tentacles that could extend and change at will. It had many variations in its attacks, making it impossible to guard against. This giant miasma monster that had one of its tentacles cut off by Li Daochong had a pair of wash-basin-sized eyes burning with anger. This little reptile in front of it had actually injured it. It could not be forgiven. It had to eat him. Roar! A roar that seemed to come from hell soared into the sky. The giant miasma monster opened its mouth, revealing a mess of malevolent teeth. It bit at Li Daochong like a blender. Zong! A beam of purple light fell from the sky, bringing with it a faint light. The giant miasma monster did not even have time to react. Its head was split in half, and its huge body was split in half. Swish! Another grayish-silver light flashed. An unremarkable knife flew out from Li Daochong's hand. Before it could touch the giant miasma monster that was split in half, the chi of primal chaos crushed it. This was the first time Li Daochong used the primal chaos knife. He only wanted to test its power. He did not expect the destructive power to be so strong. The giant miasma monster could not resist at all. At this moment, the swamp below churned like a tsunami. Dozens of giant miasma monsters came out from different directions. They surrounded Li Daochong. "Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll fulfill your wishes." A cold light flashed in Li Daochong's eyes as he unleashed his divine telekinesis, manipulating the Chaos Dagger and Purple Mystic to attack indiscriminately. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 giant miasma monsters were killed, leaving nothing behind. These aggressive giant miasma monsters did not even have time to display their powerful strength before they were crushed. The remaining giant miasma monster turned from a ferocious tiger to a small cat. Its eyes were filled with terror, as if it had seen the demon king of Hades. Just as Li Daochong was about to wipe out all of the giant miasma monsters, a dark gray light shot out from below. The speed was extremely fast. Even Li Daochong was almost unable to dodge it. Fortunately, the Thousand Sonic Escape was in a state of storing up power. Otherwise, Li Daochong would really fall for it. That dark gray light seemed unremarkable, but Li Daochong felt an indescribable sense of weakness. The vegetation on the swamp withered at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into dust and dissipating in the wind. The Chaos Dagger and Purple Mystic were both affected. They slowed down and automatically activated their defenses to resist the Chi of weakness. In the void more than 10 meters in front of Li Daocheng, a shadow flickered. A thing that was neither human nor ghost appeared there. Its overall shape was like a human, but it only had one leg. The other leg was always on its waist. It had a cow's nose, double eyes, a pair of sharp horns on its head, and an iron fan on its back. This was the nightmare demon king of Hades, Suduo. It was a creature of the Hades that was neither a demon, nor a ghost, nor a beast. In the Great War 1,000 years ago, it had killed countless high-level cultivators of the human domain. It had even killed a late-stage, tribulation-passing cultivator. The Suduo that controlled the law of weakness had caused the entire human domain to tremble in fear. Its attack power was not strong. It did not have any powerful dark arts, nor did it have many tricks. Its demon body was also not that strong, but as long as one was close to it, anyone would be affected by the law of weakness, and their strength would decrease greatly. Cultivators with a slightly lower cultivation level would immediately lose their spirit chi and become ordinary people once they got close. The bug-like passive effect became the Suduo's most powerful trump card. The most terrifying thing was that the law of weakness could ignore the level of cultivation. Spiritual venerables would also be weakened if they got close. Li Daocheng's spiritual sense was as strong as a peak unification stage cultivator. It could even compete with an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator. The spiritual sense barrier was as strong as a rock and airtight, but it could not block the chi of weakness. Even the spiritual highland was weakened to the point of disappearing. So powerful, Li Daocheng said in surprise. The Suduo was not a mysterious demon. The human domain spirit world did not know much about it. Li Daocheng naturally knew everything about the Suduo, but he did not expect it to be so powerful. Human cultivator, how dare you kill my demon pet? The Suduo looked at Li Daocheng with gloomy eyes. He wanted nothing more than to bite off his head to vent his anger. So what if I killed it? Li Daocheng shrugged. Li Daocheng seemed to be indifferent and was not afraid of the Suduo at all, but he was a little uncertain in his heart. At this moment, his primordial spirit was weak and could not use its full strength. Although the connection between him and Zishuan and the Chaos Knife was still there, it was vague. But even so, Li Daocheng did not care, because he still had many other trump cards to use. For example, the level 19 talisman, the Heavenly Thunder spell, and so on. You killed my demon pet. I will imprison you in this world forever, the Suduo said coldly. Huh? Li Daocheng heard this and was puzzled. There is such a thing? The Jiuquan underworld object could transcend the Jiuquan law and imprison the soul that entered the Jiuquan divine realm here, surpassing the control of the Jiuquan spiritual venerables? Damn it, was this guy bluffing? Or could it really be done like this? Weakening domain, the Suduo said softly. Li Daocheng felt his body sink, and the gravity around him suddenly increased by several hundred times. That was not all. His whole person seemed to have gone through a life and death battle, and he was a little breathless. Spiritual chi was constantly flowing out of his body. Li Daocheng's eyes flashed purple, and the second primordial spirit, the Heavenly Thunder primordial spirit, slowly rose in the world in his body. The purple, profound Heavenly Thunder quickly spread, enveloping the world in his body. In just a few breaths of time, Li Daocheng's heavy feeling disappeared, and he could no longer feel the weakness. But on the surface, he still looked very weak, as if he could fall from the sky and fall into the swamp at any time. Sleep, human cultivator. In front of you is the celestial world gate that you yearn for the most. Go in, and you can enter the paradise. The Suduo's voice was extremely bewitching, and the aura of weakness became more and more solid. The surrounding air became sticky and slow. There was no wind, no sound, and it was terrifyingly quiet. Everything fell into a dead silence. Li Daocheng slowly closed his eyes. Suduo's eyes revealed a smug smile, and he suddenly moved. The leg hanging from his waist stepped on Li Daocheng's head. Void, eternal restriction, Suduo shouted. Suddenly, Li Daocheng's closed eyes suddenly opened, and purple light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh! A blue light shot out. The smile in Su Duo's eyes disappeared, and he was shocked. Boom! Thunder accompanied by blue lightning poured into Su Duo's body, and he was sent flying. Su Duo was dizzy from the explosion, and his body was surrounded by lightning, and he was in great pain. You actually broke through my weakening domain. Su Duo stared at Li Daochong in disbelief. Level 19 Thunder Talisman. It's useless, Li Daochong said regretfully. He thought that it could at least cause some damage. But Su Duo was only sent flying, and all the thunder power poured into his body did not cause any effective damage. It should be known that thunder power had a multiplier effect on all netherworld creatures, and it was the nemesis of all netherworld creatures. The thunder power of a level 19 Thunder Talisman was comparable to ordinary thunder. Li Daochong pretended to be weak, and then attacked him when he least expected it. Su Duo was hit, but he was not injured. This play was in vain. No wonder you dare to step into this dead swamp alone. You have something to rely on. Good, very good, very good. Human cultivator, let me see what else you can do. Su Duo snorted, and the huge iron fan behind him slowly flew into his hand. Wonderful bookhouse. Chapter 824. The iron fan was shaped like a banana and was more than 6 meters long. It was dark red in color and was made from a rare and special type of devil metal from Hades. This type of devil metal was called Kuei Wu. It had a weakening effect. Not only spiritual objects, but even netherworld objects would be weakened when they approached it. Kuei Wu and Su Wei were a match made in heaven. When combined, they could unleash the law of weakening to the extreme. Nothing could escape from it. Regardless of whether it was alive or dead, it would become even weaker. Human cultivator, you can still raise your hand. Enjoy the feeling of moving freely. Su Wei's hoarse voice slowly sounded. The Kuei Wu fan emitted a gray mist that constantly spread in all directions. The mud in the swamp was changing. It became drier and drier, and the water was disappearing. Space seemed to shrink under the influence of the law of weakening. Whoosh! Suddenly, Su Wei fanned the Kuei Wu fan in his hand. The huge iron fan did not set off a gust of wind. It did not even produce a trace of power. However, countless suction forces appeared inexplicably in the deathly silent environment, sucking everything in the space. In an instant, it became a true land of nothingness. Su Wei's eyes were ferocious. The qi of weakening in his body continued to expand until it reached its limit. Li Daochong sneered. Although the law of weakening was powerful, it could not affect his heavenly thunder primordial spirit. The Jiushuan law that he had just comprehended had played a key role. If I hadn't comprehended a trace of the laws of the 9 profundities, I might have really died here today. Li Daochong spoke softly to himself before his figure vanished. Su Wei's face twitched when he saw Li Daochong disappear. His eyes were filled with disbelief. How could he still move under such a terrifying law of weakening? Did he burn his primordial spirit? Su Wei's eyes flickered. To deal with trash like you, there's no need to burn my primordial spirit. Li Daochong's voice came from behind Su Wei. Whoosh! Su Wei's pupils shrank. He waved the Kuei Wu fan behind him. Clang! The Kuei Wu fan collided with the purple mystic saber, producing an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding. Bang! Bang! Purple sparks flashed on the purple mystic saber. Su Fei desperately tried to inject the weak qi into the purple profound saber, but he couldn't do it. On the surface of the purple profound saber, there seemed to be a layer of unshakable mysterious power that resisted the law of weakness. The law of weakness is useless against me. Do you still not understand? Li Daochong held Zishuan in his hand as he stared at the void. Impossible! Su Tuo exclaimed. Bang! Before he could finish his sentence, Li Daochong punched Void Walker in the face, and the latter fell into the swamp like a meteor. Muddy waves soared into the sky, and a large swamp disappeared. Li Daochong followed him and plunged into the swamp. The purple mystic saber in his hand split the swamp into 2 halves. Before Su Fei could recover, One of the horns on his head was grabbed and pulled out of the swamp. Bang! Li Daochong kicked Su Shuai's lower back with great force. Wow! Su Fei spat out a mouthful of acid. His face was filled with fear. Enduring the pain, he raised his black fan and swatted it at Li Daochong. Whoosh! The sound of air being torn apart came. The chaos knife was like a laser, piercing a hole in the black fan. Bang! Another kick landed on Su Fei's back. He wanted to break free and escape, but one of his horns was tightly grabbed by Li Daochong. In close combat, Su Fei was no match for him. Even if it used all of its strength and the extra leg on its waist, it still couldn't touch a single hair on Li Daochong's body. Soon, Su Fei's face was bruised and swollen. The horns on his head cracked. The black fan was riddled with holes by the chaos knife. It no longer looked like a king-grade netherworld treasure. It looked like a big broken fan that could be used to make firewood in a stove. Hero, please spare me. Hero, please spare me. Su Fei could not take the beating anymore. He did not care about his face anymore and begged for mercy. Once Su Fei's law of weakness was useless, he had no power to resist and could only take the beating. Li Daochong looked at Su Fei in surprise. He did not expect this guy to be so spineless. He was completely different from the high-level netherworld demons he had met before. On Blackwood Star, Li Daochong had met several high-level netherworld demons, but they had never begged for mercy. Li Daochong punched again. Suddenly, he paused. His eyes flashed. Do you admit defeat? Yes. I'm completely convinced. At this moment, Su Tuo was like a hooligan on the street who was being pushed to the ground. He had no face to speak of. Do you want to live or die? Li Daochong asked sternly. Hero, who wants to die? Su Fei was about to cry. He looked at Li Daochong in horror, as if he was looking at the great demon king of Hades. This is not the real world. Could it be that you have a life? Li Daochong asked curiously. Hero, Jiushuan Divine Realm is a world created by the spiritual sage. It's just that everything here exists in the form of a soul. I am a Su Fei heavenly demon refined by the Jiushuan spiritual sage. Back then, I was no match for the might of the Jiushuan spiritual sage. Since then, I have become the Jiushuan Divine Realms Goblin. Naturally, I have a life. However, without the permission of the Jiushuan spiritual sage, I cannot leave this place. Su Fei did not dare to hide anything. After Li Daochong heard this, shock flashed through his eyes. Just what level had the Jiushuan spiritual sage reached? This Jiushuan Divine Realm was actually real. Moreover, it was completely under the control of the Jiushuan spiritual sage. To put it bluntly, the Jiushuan spiritual sage was the highest god of the Jiushuan Divine Realm. She could do whatever she wanted. She controlled life and death. She controlled reincarnation. It turned out that the Jiushuan netherworld creatures that appeared here were actually real. The netherworld creatures that appeared in the Jiushuan Divine Realm are all real. Li Daochong asked immediately, Hero, only a netherworld demon of my level is real. The others are all creatures created by the Jiushuan spiritual sage under the control of the Jiushuan law using the Jiushuan divine crystal. However, they're also alive. It's just that they're not the main body. To put it simply, they're similar to the spiritual order in the brain of you human cultivators. Su Fei hurriedly replied, So that's how it is. Li Daochong seemed to have understood something. Then, his face changed and was filled with darkness. In an instant, he turned into an evil demon king. He looked down at Su Fei and said, Don't you want to die? Su Fei was so scared that he curled up like a frightened mouse. His head shook like a rattle drum. If you don't want to die, then be my guard for 3 days. I want to meditate in the depths of the swamp. During this time, no living creatures can come within 30 kilometers of me. If you can let me have 3 days of peace, I won't kill you. Li Daochong's voice was gloomy. In fact, he was deliberately pretending to be fierce. Su Fei felt as if he had been pardoned. He knelt down and kowtowed. Thank you, hero, for not killing me. Thank you, hero, for not killing me. This little one will complete the task. Even if the heavenly emperor comes, this little one will stop him even if his bones are crushed. Li Daochong almost couldn't hold back his laughter. If the Heavenly Emperor really came, with this spineless character of his, he would sell this old man out. Go, I will meditate here. Li Daochong waved his hand. Hero, please go ahead. Su Fei said after getting permission and hurriedly ran away. Li Daochong was like a terrifying god of plague. Su Fei dived into the swamp and fled. In his panic, he only wanted to escape from this terrifying area. Too scary. This person is too scary. I can't stay in this dangerous place anymore. I can only go to Jiushuan to avoid the limelight and wait for this damn competition to end before coming out again. Su Fei had no intention of letting Li Daochong out. This swamp was very wide, at least hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. Everything in Jiushuan was ridiculously big. Su Fei didn't dare to fly. He dived into the swamp and escaped for thousands of kilometers in one breath. Only when he couldn't sense Li Daochong's aura at all did he heave a sigh of relief. Su Fei escaped in the water for a while before he was relieved to poke his head out of the swamp. He looked around and confirmed that he was safe. His face revealed a smile of having escaped. You wanted to be a watchdog? Hee, absolutely impossible. Su Fei was proud and unconsciously said his thoughts. He then flew up. Absolutely impossible? A somewhat lazy voice came from above. Auditory hallucination? Su Fei shook his head. He felt that he must have been too frightened and was a little neurotic. Su Fei slowly rose more than 10 meters. A handsome face was hanging in the air with a grin. Their eyes met. At that moment, Su Fei's demon core suddenly stopped rotating. His eyes were wide open and popped out of their sockets. He looked at Li Daochong in disbelief. Didn't you watchdog wander too far? Li Daochong continued. Haha, I'm patrolling. Su Fei laughed to cover up. Is that so? If you go further than 100 kilometers, you won't even have the chance to be a watchdog. Li Daochong's voice was slightly cold. Haha, great hero, please calm down. I will be the best watchdog to satisfy you. Su Fei continued to laugh to cover up his fear. Let's go back. Li Daochong ordered. Understood. Su Fei reflexively said the unique language of ancient human cultivators. Whoosh. Su Fei only saw a flash in front of his eyes. The wind whistled in his ears. He could barely open his eyes. After a few breaths, his body stopped moving. Su Fei's eyes turned into small black dots. He didn't know what had just happened. Now he had returned to the starting point of the battle with Li Daochong. What kind of speed was that? Teleportation? Su Fei completely dismissed the idea of running away in an instant. He didn't dare to have any other thoughts. He was determined to be a watchdog. Chapter 825. Li Daochong put down Su Fei and entered the depths of the swamp in a flash. This time, Su Fei no longer dared to think of running away. He had never seen such a terrifying human cultivator. Li Daochong did not go too far. He found a place with denser camphor trees in the swamp and immediately entered a meditative state. He separated dozens of soul clones and scattered in all directions. In the Jiushuan God realm timeline, a day passed quietly. Outside the dead swamp, a group of cultivators flew in from afar and landed at the edge of the swamp. There were as many as 10 cultivators in this group. They were of different shapes and sizes, men and women. Every cultivator had their own characteristics. Among them, 3 were sword cultivators, 1 was saber cultivator, 2 were spell cultivators, and the other 4 could not be determined from their appearance. However, all 10 of them had profound cultivation and were powerful. None of them were below the void refinement stage. If the contestants who had been in the third capital saw them, they would definitely be secretly shocked, because half of these 10 contestants were powerful people on the prodigy roll. One of the female cultivators looked weak, as if she did not have the strength to truss a chicken. She was in a similar state to Ping when she had not yet stepped into the ranks of cultivators. The female cultivator was petite and wore a green dress. Her long black hair was casually tied behind her head. She was elegant and refined, like a fairy maiden who had not yet grown up in the heavens. Judging from her appearance, this girl was the weakest of the 10. Strangely, the other 9 people consciously stood in a line, and the girl naturally stood in the center. The 9 people seemed very reserved in front of the girl. The girl did not speak, so the others kept their words in their stomachs. The girl's eyes were clear as she stared at the gray fog in the swamp. Her divine telekinesis had already penetrated dozens of kilometers to explore. However, no matter how she probed, she could not clearly perceive the specific situation in the depths of the swamp. Everything was very blurry. The girl, who had absolute confidence in her divine telekinesis, could not help but feel strange. Even she could not see the reason, let alone the others. "Are you sure you want to go in and hunt?" the girl asked slowly after several fruitless probings. One of the 9 people was a refined young man in a white robe, and he held a folding fan in his hand as he continued. "Little fish, besides this deathly, silent swamp in the surroundings of Imperial Capital Number 3, all the other high-grade hunting grounds have already been swept through, and only this place is still untouched. What's the point of hunting? Isn't it easier to kill the contestants to gain battle points?" The girl called Little You said lightly. She was not very interested in hunting. "Young miss, although killing the participants can earn you more battle merits, there is news that there are hidden hunting lines in this competition. It is said that there are King of Hell-level ferocious beasts or demon kings in every Imperial city. Once you hunt down a 9 mysterious underworld creature of this level, you will not only earn battle merits, but also merit points," a middle-aged man standing behind the young girl said. This man's face was stern, and he gave off a dignified aura without being angry. He was different from the other participants, and his bone age was over 50. Of all the contestants, his cultivation base was at the late stage of the Void Refinement realm. In terms of cultivation base alone, he was definitely very strong in this competition. However, according to his bone age, he was no longer a heaven-defying genius. However, this man's attitude towards the girl was extremely respectful, which was very different from the other 8 people. The other 8 people seemed to be afraid, but the middle-aged man didn't seem afraid at all. Instead, he was respectful. If a high-level cultivator from the outside world were to see this middle-aged man, they would definitely be shocked. He was the famous Sir God Hacker in the spiritual realm of the human realm. Simply put, he was an expert in creating the spiritual brain virus. His spiritual mind was so powerful that he could control the programming of the spiritual brain directly. He was an out-and-out divine spiritual sorcerer, a true divine spiritual sorcerer. His purpose in the competition was to assist the girl. In terms of cultivation, a cultivator at the spiritual realm of the human realm was not a high-level cultivator. But as a rare genius divine spiritual sorcerer, his status was totally different. In the spiritual simulation world, a divine spiritual sorcerer like Sir God Hacker was the undisputed king. In terms of making spiritual talismans, spiritual base programming, steel puppets, and spiritual droplet development, people like Sir God Hacker were indispensable. Oh, there's also the merit. After hearing Sir God Hacker's words, a look of surprise appeared on the girl's beautiful face. "Yes, Mississippi. I also heard that 1 battle point can be worth more than 10,000 battle points," Sir God Hacker continued. This time, not only the girl, but also the other 8 people were surprised. They didn't seem to be very clear about such news. They looked at Sir God Hacker with more mystery in their eyes. Immortal Spirit Venerable didn't mention this so-called hidden hunting line when he introduced the rules. However, there had been some rumors recently because someone had obtained some merit points. How'd he get it? What was the use of battle points? But they didn't know. It was also because of these rumors that they had the idea to explore the dead swamp. Obviously, the first round of the test was not as simple as they had imagined. Or maybe the first round of the test was inseparable from the second round of the test. It was very likely that the immortal spiritual venerable had deliberately left some clues behind so that the contestants could search for them themselves during the competition. It was a part of the competition itself. The girl's eyes lit up. "If so, I'll have to take a look at the dead swamp." Fellow Taoist Bamboo, I heard people chatting in the tavern of the capital yesterday. It is said that someone has entered the dead swamp to hunt, a girl in yellow suddenly said. "Really? Is the news accurate?" Even I am afraid of the dead swamp. I can't see the situation inside. Who is so bold as to go in blindfolded? Don't they know that there is a strange miasma inside the dead swamp? Anyone who goes and will be poisoned and weakened by the miasma? The girl asked with suspicion. Fellow Taoist Bamboo, I've also heard what Fairy Jalon said. The day before yesterday, I flew over the edge of the deathly swamp and heard the sounds of battle coming from the depths, another burly young man said. If that's the case, someone has really gone in to seek death. The girl nodded slightly. After a few conversations, the girl's identity was clear. She was the youngest direct descendant of a spirit venerable in the spirit world of the human domain, the daughter of spirit venerable, Zhu Xiaoyu. Fellow Taoist Bamboo, we are late. Last night, 2 groups of people entered the dead swamp to hunt. Another young cultivator standing at the outermost edge said. Could it be Feng Buji's group? Zhu Xiaoyu's bright eyes moved slightly as she asked. Fellow Taoist Zhu's foresight is miraculous. One of the 2 groups of people is indeed Feng Buji's group, while the other group is from the Jade Clear Great Void's Green Sun Medicine Refinery, the young cultivator replied. Interesting. Including us. All the geniuses of the 3 great cultivation empires are here. Zhu Xiaoyu smiled. Her bright eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness. At the same time, she revealed a trace of an evil smile that didn't fit her pure appearance. Chapter 826. For the other contestants, a top-tier prodigy like Zhu Xiaoyu was not someone they could afford to offend. Meanwhile, prodigies at the same level as Zhu Xiaoyu could not possibly fight to the death during the first round. The finals had just begun. Who would be so bored as to take out their trump cards and show them off? For the top-tier prodigies, this was just a warm-up match. The real battle had yet to come. To them, it would be their time to shine after the second round. At that time, they would have to fight one-on-one to determine their ranking. Therefore, Zhu Xiaoyu had been bored for the past 8 months. Even the newly powerful Jiuquan netherworld items could not pique her interest. She wanted to fight with a real expert. That would be satisfying. When she found out that there were experts in the dead swamp, Zhu Xiaoyu's excitement was evident. Fighting to her heart's content was the most important thing. As for battle credits, Zhu Xiaoyu was already ranked 5th on the battle credits leaderboard without much effort. That was a total of 3,790,000 battle credits. For most of the contestants, this was an astronomical number. They could not possibly obtain such a huge amount of battle credits. However, it was just a matter of minutes for Zhu Xiaoyu. The first Jiuquan netherworld demon that was formed in Imperial Capital Number 3 was annihilated by Zhu Xiaoyu's divine telekinesis attack. Of course, it was unrealistic to accumulate so many battle credits by just hunting. More than half of the 3,790,000 battle credits came from the contestants. A month ago, Zhu Xiaoyu felt that the speed of gaining battle credits was too slow. Thus, she disguised herself and went around killing contestants. Whoever encountered her was unlucky. All the contestants who encountered Zhu Xiaoyu were instantly killed without exception. Those who could block one attack from her were already super experts. Zhu Xiaoyu's ranking had been stable in the top 20. With a little effort, she immediately entered the top 10. Furthermore, she gradually rose to the 5th position. The 4 prodigies in front of her were increasing their battle credits very quickly. Their speed was comparable to hers. After half a month of hunting contestants, Zhu Xiaoyu felt that it was boring. Since her ranking was stable, it was too tiring to catch up to the 4 people in front of her. Thus, she stopped and looked around for powerful opponents. However, after half a month, there was not a single person who could fight with her. Until this morning, someone found Zhu Xiaoyu and said that there was someone in the dead swamp that could fight with her. The deathly swamp had always been very mysterious in the 3rd Imperial Capital. As long as one entered it, their cultivation would be greatly affected. Then, he was poisoned and dried up, and without knowing what happened, he reported to the resurrection point. As long as they came into contact with the gray fog, it would be useless even if they left. They would slowly die from the poison and would only recover after reviving at the respawn point. A few months ago, Bamboo Fish came here once and almost fell for it. She couldn't find out the reason either. Moreover, there didn't seem to be any attractive Jushuan underworld demons in the dead swamp, so there was no need for her to waste time researching the poisonous fog. Therefore, the dead swamp really became the dead swamp. Whether it was the contestants or the Joshuan's netherworld creatures, they rarely appeared here. There were a few who didn't care about their lives, but none of them survived. Until yesterday, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the dead swamp, which startled the nearby contestants. Soon after, the terrifying Joshuan Netherchi appeared briefly in the deathly swamp, indicating that an extremely powerful Joshuan Nether demon had appeared in the deathly swamp. It was much more powerful than any Joshuan Nether demon that had appeared before. However, the aura only appeared for tens of seconds before disappearing. No matter what method the contestants used, they couldn't detect it at all. It was as if it never existed. Bamboo Fish's group of 10 stayed at the edge of the deathly swamp for a short, while before activating their strongest defensive measures and flying into the swamp. At the same time, in the depths of the deathly swamp, 3 cultivators were in a bitter battle with a giant miasma monster. More than 10 huge tentacles with suction cups and sharp fangs were like more than 10 huge pythons. Whether it was in terms of attack or defense, they were extremely powerful. The 3 cultivators fought with all their might in a fluster and barely managed to fight to a draw with the giant miasma monster that had yet to show itself. The other 3 young cultivators didn't make a move. They just floated in the air tens of meters away and watched. The 3 young cultivators who didn't make a move were all wearing green Taoist robes. There were 2 men and 1 woman. On the chest of their robes, there were 4 eye-catching words that were elegantly embroidered with golden threads. Green Sun Medicine Refinement. The only female cultivator was holding a fly whisk in her hand. She was dressed like a Taoist nun. Her hair was coiled up with a hairpin inserted into it. Although the female cultivator was extremely beautiful, she didn't have any expression. She was as cold as ice, as if someone owed her tens of billions of high-grade spirit stones. However, the aura on her body was extremely powerful. It had already condensed into a small aura field that enveloped the entire area. The other 2 male cultivators stood on both sides of the female cultivator with her as the center. This female cultivator was Mu Wanrong, the chief alchemist of the younger generation of Green Sun Medicine Refinery. She and Lu Yuandao were the strongest young cultivators of Green Sun Medicine Refinery in the past 1,000 years. They were known as the 2 prides of Green Sunday. In terms of talent, Lu Yuandao was stronger than Mu Wanrong. However, the latter was much more hardworking than the former. Other than eating and sleeping, Mu Wanrong could only cultivate. Therefore, in terms of strength, Lu Yuandao was inferior to Mu Wanrong. Although the former had great potential, she couldn't unleash it without hard work. Any alchemist would have a certain type of spiritual fire or true fire in their spirit veins. The flame controlled by Mu Wanrong was the mystic ice true fire, which was formed by the mystic ice crystal core in the extreme ice land, which had been condensed for thousands of years in the mystic sky realm. The Xian ice true fire intertwined 2 opposite elements together, forming the yin and yang true fire. The core was the Xian fire, while the outer layer was the ice fire. The ice fire could freeze everything, while the Xian fire could melt everything. When the 2 merged into one, it was like a blender that could turn indestructible materials into slag. The Xian ice true fire was a peerless true fire used to make special pills. Mu Wanrong was ranked 4th on the Qiansong Heaven's Pride ranking, just 1 position higher than Lu Yuandao. Green Sun Medicine Refinery was ranked 4th and 5th on the Heaven's Pride ranking, which showed how deep their foundations were. It was similar to their ranking as one of the top 10 cultivation companies in the spirit world. Mu Wanrong's group of 6 were all competitors of Green Sun Medicine Refinery. At this moment, the 3 young cultivators who were fighting with the giant miasma monster were all peak soul formation. In other cultivation companies, any one of them could hold up the sky, but in Green Sun Medicine Refinery, they could only be cannon fodder. The two young male cultivators floating beside Mu Wanrong were mid-void refinement realm. The two of them weren't weak and could even be said to be very strong. However, they didn't have the ability to fight above their level. At mid-void refinement realm, their combat strength stopped there. At most, they could fight against late void refinement realm cultivators. Mu Wanrong's talent was a little weaker. Her cultivation was the same as the two male cultivators, mid-void refinement realm. However, Mu Wanrong's combat strength was close to mid-void refinement realm, and the two male cultivators weren't on the same level as her. Senior sister, this giant miasma monster is really hard to deal with. Chun Feng and the other two probably can't beat it. The young cultivator floating on Mu Wanrong's left with a really eye-catching round face couldn't help but say, "The giant miasma monster is an earth demon general-level ghost beast. Naturally, it isn't something normal ghost beasts can compare to. With Chun Feng and the other two's strength, it is normal that they can't beat it. I have observed enough. Kong Wu, go and help them," Mu Wanrong said expressionlessly. "Yes, senior sister." Kong Wu's honest face showed a hint of joy as he accepted the order. He was really respectful towards Mu Wanrong. Those who didn't know would think that Mu Wanrong was his master. It was as if being ordered by Mu Wanrong was a type of enjoyment for him. Chapter 827. In the battle, in order to help his companion block the attacks of the two tentacles, Chun Feng left himself wide open. A giant tentacle whipped over at lightning speed. Chun Feng's face was pale. He knew that he would definitely be sent to the resurrection point, but at the last moment he still tried to block with the flaming blade in his hand. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. A square cauldron flew through the air and crashed into the tentacle with a bang. Roar! The mud in the swamp below rolled, and a terrifying roar could be heard. This attack caused the giant miasma monster great pain. The flames inside the square cauldron burned the tentacle to ashes. Chun Feng let out a sigh of relief and looked gratefully at Kong Wu, who had come to help. Dong, dong, dong. Chun Feng had just taken a breath when a series of muffled sounds came from below. More than a dozen giant tentacles shot out at the same time. They whipped toward Chun Feng and Kong Wu, and the 100-meter-long tentacles moved as fast as lightning. Kong Wu's eyes focused, and he shouted, "Good timing." The square cauldron in the air grew bigger. Kong Wu suddenly pressed down with his palm. Mount Tai crush. Boom! The square cauldron, which had turned into the size of a small mountain, blocked all the incoming tentacles and pressed down like a landslide. The swamp below, which was covered by the water ghost grass, exploded. Black liquids splashed everywhere, mixed with all kinds of soft substances. The giant miasma monster was crushed into meat paste by the square cauldron and killed in an instant. The three young cultivators, who had been fighting fiercely for a long time, but still couldn't do anything to the giant miasma monster, looked at this scene in a daze and couldn't help but feel awe. They looked at Kong Wu with fear in their eyes. Although they knew Kong Wu was powerful, they didn't expect him to be this powerful. Such a troublesome giant miasma monster was just a pile of soft meat in front of Kong Wu. "Be careful," Mu Wanrong suddenly warned. The slightly relaxed Kong Wu had 36,000 hairs all over his body, standing on end. He withdrew the square cauldron and covered the three of them. Bang, 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 bang. Just as the square cauldron covered the four of them, more than 100 tentacles shot toward them from all directions. They were so fast that it was hard to see them with the naked eye. What was even more terrifying was that at such a close distance, there were no signs of life. They couldn't even detect the aura. If not for Mu Wanrong's warning, not to mention Chun Feng, Kong Wu would have been killed. The power of the hundreds of tentacles was incomparably terrifying. Kong Wu's profound sky magic treasure, the Fire Lotus Square Cauldron, was now full of holes. It looked like scrap metal. Kong Wu activated the true fire of the fiery lotus to disperse the tentacles. He came out of the square cauldron and saw that his natal magical weapon was covered in wounds. He was so angry that he trembled all over. The swamp down below started to move, and over 10 giant miasma monsters rushed out from the mud. Its gigantic head was as big as a 3-story building, even bigger than the giant miasma monster Kong Wu had killed. Damned animals. Watch me burn you all, Kong Wu said furiously. What he was really angry about wasn't his magic weapon being smashed. This was the Jiushuan realm of the gods, so it didn't matter even if his magic weapon was smashed. What Kong Wu was angry about was that these bastards had embarrassed him in front of Mu Wanrong. Red Lotus True Fire. The flames around Kong Wu leaped up with a boom, as if his entire body had been ignited. The surrounding temperature instantly soared, and even the space around them was dyed a fiery red. The Fire Lotus Square cauldron expanded to about 10 feet in size. Kong Wu lifted the side of the square cauldron with one hand, aiming the mouth of the cauldron downward. The Red Lotus True Fire in the cauldron burned fiercely. Have a taste of my Red Lotus True Fire bullets. Kong Wu's eyes were spitting fire. He held the cauldron with one hand, and his body was covered in flames. From afar, he looked like the ancient god Zhurong. Although the giant miasma monsters couldn't fly, their gigantic bodies and tentacles that were hundreds of meters long allowed them to attack at low altitudes. When a true fire forced the giant miasma monsters to retreat, they didn't use their tentacles this time. Instead, they opened their mouths and revealed their messy teeth. However, they weren't going to bite people. Kong Wu didn't know what these bastards were going to do, but he didn't have time to think. He released his spirit energy and activated the true fire in the cauldron. Bang, bang, bang. Kong Wu turned his body and aimed at the giant miasma monster at high speed. Then huge red lotus true fireballs shot out of the cauldron like giant cannonballs. Almost at the same time. Puff, puff, puff. The giant miasma monsters opened their mouths and spat out a black, viscous, ink-like liquid. The jet black ink turned into black droplets that shot towards the void where Kong Wu was. Boom, boom, boom. A red lotus true fire bullet collided with a black liquid bullet in midair and instantly exploded. What? Kong Wu was shocked. The red lotus true fire that he was most proud of had been destroyed by these soft-body monsters. Kong Wu was unwilling to give up. He activated his spirit energy and wanted to continue firing, but when he activated his spirit energy again, he felt his body go limp, and he almost fell into the swamp from midair. Kong Wu felt powerless. He didn't have the energy to activate his true fire. Whoosh! A giant tentacle whipped through the air. Slap! Kong Wu was swatted away like a fly being swatted by a fly swatter. Kong Wu could easily deal with one giant miasma monster, but when more than 10 even more powerful giant miasma monsters attacked together, Kong Wu immediately became powerless. Of course, in this dead swamp, a cultivator's strength would be greatly weakened, and their spirit energy would be constantly diluted and weakened. The gray mist above the swamp was no decoration. This was the giant miasma monster's territory. No matter how strong Kong Wu was, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. When the tentacle struck Kong Wu, even Mu Wanrong couldn't react in time. Anger flashed in her eyes, and she said to another cultivator beside her, "Yuli, you go as well." Yuli nodded slightly, and then his figure flashed as he joined the battle. Kong Wu was fine after being struck by the giant tentacle. The profound heaven-grade robe made by Cloud Jade clothing had a great effect. He was only slightly shaken and wasn't injured, but his body felt increasingly weak. Yuli controlled 3 fire pearls. As soon as he joined the battle, he stalled more than 10 giant miasma monsters, preventing Kong Wu from suffering a second attack. Chun Feng and the other 2 also used their abilities to support him. On Kong Wu's side, he could only use a few minor abilities. He didn't have the strength to use any of his ultimate moves. He swallowed several high-grade recovery spirit pills, but the effects were minimal. Mu Wanrong saw that Kong Wu was exhausted and couldn't help but raise her guard against the gray mist around them. The toxicity of the gray mist was slowly becoming stronger. Mu Wanrong stretched out her hand and summoned a long silver saber. This saber was not her natal magic weapon, but its grade was not inferior to Mu Wanrong's natal magic weapon. In some aspects, It even surpassed Mu Wanrong's natal magic weapon. However, although the saber was powerful, she couldn't use it. After studying it for 3 months, she still couldn't figure it out. At present, she only knew that this saber could defend itself. Based on this point alone, this saber could be ranked among the profound heaven-grade magic treasures. This saber could emit a faint layer of light that enveloped the wielder. No matter if it was a physical attack or a magical attack, it could be blocked. As soon as the saber appeared, the gray mist around Mu Wanrong was immediately isolated. She immediately felt much better. This swamp is really strange. Mu Wanrong's eyes flickered as she glanced around. The gray mist had a strong effect on her. Even spiritual Highland was useless against her. She couldn't help but feel afraid. The reason why Mu Wanrong hadn't joined the battle to save her companions was not that she didn't want to help, but from the first second she came here, she felt that there was a pair of eyes staring at them. This feeling of being watched made Mu Wanrong not dare to slack off for a moment. She had been on high alert all the time. The miasma monster wasn't the ultimate ghost of this swamp. The eyes hidden in the dark were. When Mu Wanrong and others were struggling to deal with the miasma monster, in a hole in a withered tree hundreds of kilometers away, Li Daochong slowly opened his eyes with some doubts in his eyes. He just sensed a breath that seemed to belong to the silver bottle. Although it was very weak, the feeling at that moment was very familiar. Except for the silver bottle, Li Daochong was sure that he wouldn't have the same feeling on anyone else. However, that breath was not the spiritual energy of the silver bottle, but the smell of her body. Li Daochong frowned slightly. Then his figure flashed and disappeared in the hole. He rushed toward the direction of the silver bottle smell. In the blink of an eye, he had flown dozens of kilometers away. An hour ago, Feng Buji, ranked 3rd in the Nam Kuan top 10, the last disciple of Yun Yao Spirit Sage, led more than 10 in-gun contestants and was attacked by a group of water monkeys in the swamp forest 500 kilometers away from where Mu Wanrong and the others were fighting. The water monkeys were a very special type of Hades' vicious beast. They looked like monkeys but were much bigger in size. They were at least 2 meters long with web fingers. Their entire body was dark green and their skin was covered with moss-like appendages. In fact, that was their fur. Their feet were as big as an elephant's, and they often had sharp barbs on their back and elbows. They also had sharp fangs in their mouths. The water monkeys were extremely strong and had thick skin. They were low-level demon, general-level vicious beasts. In the eyes of high-level cultivators, a single water monkey was not very powerful. However, no cultivator was willing to encounter it. This was because the water monkeys never acted alone. They were one of the rare high-level Hades vicious beasts that lived in groups. Moreover, they were a large group of beasts similar to ants and bees. There were at least thousands of them. The in-gun contestants, led by Feng Buji, were actually forced to enter the dead swamp. Feng Buji was unlucky to encounter the number 1 Heaven's Chosen of Qian Tsang, Han Pe. With a strength other than the 3 monsters, no one in the Jiushuan realm of the gods could force him to flee without a fight. It was not that Feng Buji was afraid of Han Pe, but Han Pe was not the only one on the other side. There were 4 people in the top 10 of the Heaven's Chosen of 2 kingdoms. 1 against 4. Feng Buji did not even think about it as he turned around and ran. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Where there is life, there is hope. He did not want to lose half of his battle points and half of his equipment just to be sent to the resurrection point. The in-gun contestants who followed Feng Buji all wanted to be protected by him. Who would have thought that even Han Pe was here? The group of people braced themselves and followed Feng Buji into the dead swamp. Strangely enough, not only did Han Pe's group not chase after Feng Buji's group, they even left as if they had no interest in deserters. However, Feng Buji's group did not dare to go back the way they came. What if Han Pe's group set up a smoke screen and they were ambushed the moment they stepped out? That would be terrible. Therefore, the group of more than 20 people flew into the depths of the dead swamp without looking back. The group of people who were prepared to fight at any time did not even meet a fly after flying for an entire night. In the wee hours of the morning, the group found a quiet area to rest. Who would have thought that not long after they landed, two cultivators would disappear in front of everyone's eyes? When the third cultivator was dragged into the swamp, he was finally discovered. Only then did the group notice the water monkey. One of the cultivators accidentally killed the water monkey. The water monkey let out an ear-piercing scream before it died. Fong Buji realized that something was wrong and immediately ordered the group to leave the area. However, they did not go far before they were drowned by the water monkey army. There was still room for them to escape. The battle had been going on for 2 hours, and it was still not over. More than half of Fong Buji's group were dead or injured. There were originally 27 people, but now there were only 12 left. Chapter 828. If it weren't for Fong Buji holding off 80% of the water monkey's attacks, they would have all died at the resurrection point. There were close to 10,000 water monkeys. Their greatest trait was that they were not afraid of death. Once they set their sights on a target, they would act like a bee and try to kill you regardless of life or death. The cultivators suffered heavy casualties, but the water monkeys were not faring any better. Other than Fong Buji's own strength, his ability to command was also very strong. Under his command, Fong Buji's army was also very strong. Under his command, the combat power of the 27 cultivators was maximized. Even so, 15 of them died at the resurrection point after a long battle. The remaining 12 were barely holding on. The water monkeys' casualties were even more severe. At least 2,000 to 3,000 water monkeys were killed. However, no matter how many of their comrades died, the attacks of the water monkeys did not weaken at all. One by one, they were like lifeless steel puppets, charging at the cultivators dauntlessly. Fong Buji's face was solemn. He knew that if this continued, he would be exhausted to death sooner or later. The water monkeys' strength had been strengthened in the Jiushuan realm of the gods. Their defense was at least 2 to 3 times stronger than the water monkeys in the real world. Fong Buji was Yun Yao Spirit Supremacy's favorite disciple. He was very talented in making dermic robes. Dermic robes were dermic treasures. However, they were more special. They were passive dermic treasures. They were special dermic treasures that had to be activated automatically. However, other than making dermic robes, Fong Buji's cultivation talent was also the best in the human realm. He was only 27 years old, but he was already at the late-stage void refinement realm. His combat power was almost on par with a late-stage body integration realm old demon. Fong Buji's natal dermic treasure was a Kuin Peng battlesuit. It was a low-grade dermic treasure. The Kuin Peng battlesuit was made by Fong Buji and Yun Yao Spirit Supremacy together. It took them 3 years. This battlesuit was similar to the spiritual armor used by body refinement cultivators. It was different from the usual dermic robes. It looked more like a suit of armor on Fong Buji's body. When it was fully opened, it covered Fong Buji completely. If Li Daocheng saw it, he would definitely exclaim, "What the F***CK? Isn't this the Iron Man of the cultivation world?" The Kuan Peng battlesuit was entirely green. There were dermic treasures hidden on the back, arms, legs, waist, and ankles. At the same time, 2 small spirit energy cannons could be extended from his shoulders. On the back of his hands, there were 3 firing ports for spirit energy submachine guns. In terms of pure firepower, Fong Buji was probably the most ferocious among all the young cultivators in the spirit realm. Fong Buji's real trump card was the 2 long blades attached to the back of the Kuan Peng battlesuit. They looked like sabers, but they weren't sabers, swords, but they weren't swords either. Overall, it looked like 2 slightly curved metal blades. They were no more than 3 fingers wide and more than 2 meters long. The handle and the blade were a single piece. These 2 long blades had a long history. It was said that they were immortal-level magical treasures left behind by a deceased spiritual supremacy. One was a gale blade, while the other was a flowing water blade. At that moment, Fong Buji was wearing the Kuan Peng battle suit, and only his face was exposed. The spirit energy cannon on his shoulder kept firing at the water monkeys who were charging at him. He clenched his fists and changed directions quickly to fire spirit energy bullets from all angles. If it weren't for Feng Buji's suppressive firepower, they would have been drowned by the water monkey army. The others cooperated with Feng Buji's suppressive fire and unleashed their divine abilities. However, there were simply too many water monkeys. There would always be a few that managed to break through the net of firepower and get close to them. Once they got close to them, the water monkeys' combat power was extremely terrifying. They were born with divine strength, and they could easily crush the head of a soul formation cultivator with a casual swipe of their claws. Feng Buji suddenly felt a sense of weakness. He lost focus for a moment, and his firepower weakened. In just 1 second, dozens of water monkeys broke through the net of firepower and rushed in. Ah! With a scream, a young cultivator was torn apart by several water monkeys. He disappeared and went to the resurrection point. Before he died, he tasted the feeling of being torn apart by 5 horses. Although he didn't really die, it would definitely leave an indelible shadow in his heart. Crunch! With a sound like a watermelon breaking, another young female cultivator's head was crushed by a huge water monkey. She went to the resurrection point as well. In the blink of an eye, the 12 people became 10. Their firepower weakened even more. Feng Buji came to his senses and regained his firepower. However, there was nothing he could do against the dozens of water monkeys. The net of firepower was set up to attack indiscriminately. After getting close to the water monkeys, Feng Buji was unable to attack them at close range. These water ghost monkeys naturally posed no threat to Feng Buji. If they attacked Feng Buji, they would be the ones to suffer. Once the Kuan Peng battlesuit was struck by a direct physical attack, it would explode with a terrifying net of lightning, reducing all nearby objects to nothingness. However, these water monkeys weren't stupid. They ignored Feng Buji's attacks. Feng Buji could only look on as his companions were killed one after another. However, he couldn't stop the net of firepower. If he stopped, the thousands of water monkeys would swarm in and inundate everyone. When that time came, there would be no one left aside from Feng Buji. A cultivator was torn apart by the water monkeys and taken to the resurrection point. There were 9 people left. Damn it! Feng Buji gritted his teeth and cursed. Before he could even finish cursing, another cultivator was killed. There were 8 people left. The surviving competitors all had pale faces and were panting heavily. They were tired and exhausted. A sense of helplessness was spreading in their hearts. Their battle credits had been halved. Their fate of being sent to the resurrection point was already set. Their rankings would drop drastically. Just as everyone thought that they were about to die, a graceful figure suddenly shot out from among the 8 people. She transformed into a bolt of lightning. Puff, puff, puff. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 water monkeys were decapitated and their beast cores were shattered. The remaining 7 people, including Feng Buji, stared blankly at the female cultivator. This female cultivator had joined the team when they encountered Han Pe and the others yesterday. Since then, she had been following the team. Along the way, this female cultivator wouldn't say a word unless absolutely necessary. Her cultivation base was considered one of the weaker ones among the team. Prior to this, she had almost been forgotten. She was too inconspicuous and was easily overlooked. She killed 15 water monkeys in an instant. Her close combat abilities were superior to most body refinement cultivators. This female cultivator didn't make a move. However, when she did make a move, her attacks were lethal. The water monkeys were killed before they could even react. The other water monkeys instantly pounced toward the female cultivator in a frenzy. The more of their companions died, the more frenzied the remaining water monkeys became. "Be careful," Feng Buji yelled softly. The female cultivator licked her lips with her small pink tongue. A cold glint flashed in the corner of her eyes. 9 split saber technique, star slashing slash. Whoosh! A dazzling saber light flashed past. Countless starlights exploded in the void. Under each of the starlights was a water monkey that had been chopped into pieces. The dozens of water monkeys that had charged through the net of attacks were all killed by this female cultivator in just a few seconds. Not a single one was left. Phone Budgie took a deep look at this female cultivator. A hint of fear appeared in his eyes. He had never seen this female cultivator's technique before. However, its power was astonishing. This female cultivator was none other than Li Daocheng's disciple, Xiao Ying. Originally, she was in the 8th imperial capital. However, not long after the competition began, she began a long journey. She hunted all the way to the 3rd imperial capital. However, her hunting targets were never Jiuquan's underworld creatures. Instead, she hunted the contestants. Since the start of the competition, Xiao Ying had killed very few Jiuquan's underworld creatures. The number of water monkeys she had killed now was more than the total number of Jiuquan's underworld creatures she had killed in the past 9 months. Xiao Ying only ambushed the contestants because they were easy to deal with and easy to deal with. 2 months ago, Xiao Ying arrived at the 3rd imperial capital. There were many contestants here. The land was vast, and the hunting range was large. Therefore, Xiao Ying made this place her ultimate hunting ground. She wanted to kill until the end of the first round of the competition. However, a month ago, the situation suddenly changed. All the contestants started to gang up on the contestants from the Ankuan Empire. This made it harder for her to ambush them. Almost all the contestants moved in groups. There were very few who were left alone. Those who moved in groups were not just in 2s or 3s. They moved in groups of 7 or 8 or more. This greatly increased the risk of Xiao Ying ambushing them. More importantly, she would expose herself. Until now, no one knew that she was the rumored phantom assassin. Chapter 829. Xiao Ying's sudden burst of destructive power made the other 7 people heave a sigh of relief, but at the same time, they felt a chill run down their spines. They could not help but think about how they would deal with it if the same move was used on them. Apart from Phone Budgie, the other 6 people realized that they could not do anything. Once this petite female cultivator got close to them, they would end up like the water monkeys and be torn apart. After these water monkeys were chopped into pieces, they mysteriously exploded and nothing was left behind in the end. The destructive power of this kind of divine ability was truly terrifying. They did not have much time to think about it. The thousands of water monkeys were still attacking wildly. They did not seem to have any intention of retreating after their companions were killed so easily. Instead, they became even more frenzied. Fellow Taoist, you're very skilled. Can you stop holding back and lend me a hand? Phone Budgie immediately sent a voice transmission to Xiao Ying. Sure. Xiao Ying's reply was simple and crisp. Phone Budgie nodded slightly and sent a voice transmission. Fellow Taoist, I'll leave the fish that escaped to you. I'm going to use other means. Xiao Ying did not reply. She only looked around with a solemn expression. If there were any fish that escaped the net, she would immediately go up and kill it with a single slash. While Phone Budgie continued to release the net of fire, he used his divine telekinesis, and the gale blade behind him slowly flew up. Suddenly, Phone Budgie stopped firing. The water monkeys surged forward like a raging tide, about to drown the 8 people. However, Phone Budgie's pause was only for a moment. Without any other movement, the gale blade shot out with a swoosh, leaving behind streaks of light in the void. Every ray of light was like a sharp blade, slicing through the void. Anything that came into contact with the streaks of light would be easily sliced in half. As long as the water monkeys were on the surface of the streaks of light, they would be instantly sliced apart. Broken limbs were scattered everywhere. The most tragic one was directly sliced in half at the waist. Hundreds of streaks of light flashed, and more than half of the thousands of water monkeys were killed or injured. Phone Budgie's battle merits were increasing at an alarming rate. 1 water monkey was worth 100 battle merits. 1,000 of them would be 100,000 battle merits. More than half of the 10,000 water monkeys were killed by Phone Budgie. His battle merits had soared by 600,000 to 700,000. There were less than 2,000 water monkeys left. This time, this group of ferocious beasts was not as crazy as before. A few water monkeys let out strange cries, turned around, and ran. The other water monkeys were spurred on and scattered in all directions. Phew! Fong Buji heaved a sigh of relief. This move consumed a lot of energy, but to Fong Buji, it was nothing. However, in the dead swamp, it was a little strenuous. The poison of the gray fog was also affecting him, and he had been fighting for a long time. If not for the fact that Fong Buji felt that his condition was not good, he would have used this move long ago. Now that he had used it, he only had a third of his spiritual energy remaining. If a powerful enemy were to appear at this moment, he would be in grave danger. Xiao Ying didn't stay idle either. She cleaned up the fish that escaped the net one by one. Since then, Gun and the rest of the contestants had finally made it through the crisis, but they did not have much energy left. If another devil dweller from the dead swamp appeared, they could only sit and wait for death. Pa pa pa. Just as the 8 of them were about to rest and adjust their breathing, a crisp clapping sound came from the void. Fong Buji's eyes widened, and the hair on his body stood on end. An incomparably powerful spiritual aura pressure completely enveloped them. They had just gone through a great battle, and before they could catch their breaths, another powerful enemy attacked them. When it rains, it pours. When it pours, it pours. Their luck was really bad. Fong Buji was not shocked by the powerful spiritual energy, but by the fact that he only sensed the other party's presence now. Could it be Han, Pe, and Yuqinghe? This was the first thought that flashed through Fong Buji's mind. He looked up and saw a weak girl in a green dress floating 100 meters above the void. Zhu Xiaoyu. Fong Buji's pupils shrunk, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Other than the 3 great evildoers, this girl was the last person he wanted to meet. Impressive, impressive. That gale light just now was really impressive. My heart was thumping when I saw it. Thousands of water ghoul monkeys were killed just like that. Brother Buji, I haven't seen you for a long time, and your strength has improved. Zhu Xiaoyu praised. Fong Buji's face twitched subconsciously, and he replied respectfully. I've embarrassed myself in front of Mississippi. In terms of strength, there was no difference between Fong Buji and Zhu Xiaoyu, and the two of them were equally matched. However, the latter was the only daughter of a spirit venerable, and her seniority was terrifying. Even the 3 great evildoers would have to call her Mississippi. How is this embarrassing? This is the most exciting performance I've seen in a long time in the Jiushuan Divine Realm. Zhu Xiaoyu continued to praise. Eldest Miss, what brings you here? Fong Buji went straight to the point and asked. Hee, is there a need to ask? I haven't sparred with Brother Buji in a long time. Since I've met you today, I naturally want to exchange a few moves with you to relieve my boredom. Zhu Xiaoyu replied with a smile. Her words were playful, and there was no aggression in them. However, the 8 people below felt a chill in their hearts when they heard it. Fong Buji was not the only one who knew Zhu Xiaoyu. The other 7 people, including Xiao Ying, all knew who she was. The only daughter of a spirit venerable, and she was the only one in the human realm. As expected, Fong Buji understood and could not help but smile bitterly. If it was a blessing, it would not be a curse. If it was a curse, it could not be avoided. Even Zhu Xiaoyu had joined the ranks of the contestants surrounding Gun. He did not know what had happened, but all the contestants were targeting Gun. Fong Buji's spiritual energy was greatly depleted, and he was no match for Zhu Xiaoyu. Even if he was in his best condition, he might not be able to win. Miss, can we spar another day? I'm not in my best condition today. You saw just now, I've used up a lot of my energy. Fong Buji knew that it was useless to say more, so he might as well admit defeat. It's not up to you. Just as Fong Buji finished speaking, a ray of light shot from afar. It was Zhu Xiaoyu's bodyguard, Sir God Hacker. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Then a few rays of light came from the void. Including Zhu Xiaoyu and Sir God Hacker, there were a total of 10 people. Moreover, none of the 10 people were just there for show. All of them were powerful, and any one of them could easily defeat Feng Buji and the others, let alone 10 of them. Other than Feng Buji and Xiao Ying, the other 6 people's faces were stiff, and their eyes were filled with fear. Feng Buji, if you admit defeat, we won't make things difficult for you. Just come up and accept your death. After all, you won't really die. You're just going to take a stroll at the resurrection point. A young man in white who was dressed like a scholar smiled at Feng Buji with a folding fan in his hand. Ru Xiaosheng, even if I admit defeat, it's only to miss, not you. Do you think you have the right to fart? Feng Buji's expression changed and turned cold. His tone was completely different from when he talked to Zhu Xiaoyu. There was a hint of arrogance in his tone. Zhu Xiaoyu's identity was special, and her strength was terrifying. Naturally, Feng Buji was wary of her. As for the others, not to mention that he still had some energy left, even if he was exhausted, he could still fight. The second place in the Namkuan top 10 was not a bluff, it was a result of his own strength. Ru Xiaoxing's expression darkened, and the smile on his face disappeared. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Feng Buji was indeed strong. If he was at his best, Ru Xiaoxing wouldn't dare to fight him head-on. However, at this moment, Feng Buji's spiritual energy was unstable, and his spiritual energy was collapsing. It was obvious that after a huge battle, he had used up too much energy and wasn't in his best state. No matter what, Ru Xiaoxing was ranked 9th on the Heaven's Pride ranking. How could he take it when Feng Buji insulted him in front of everyone? Turtle Feng, you are still so stubborn even when you are about to die. Okay, let's fight. Ru Xiaoxing scolded. Since you are in such a rush to give up your merit points, then I will grant you your wish. Feng Buji looked at Ru Xiaoxing with disdain. Let me do it. Just as Feng Buji was prepared to fight, Xiaoying suddenly spoke up. You? Feng Buji didn't know what to do. Take the time to rest and recover your spiritual energy. If I don't have enough spiritual medicine, I will give it to you. Only when you recover will we have a chance of survival. Otherwise, why don't we just kill ourselves and go to the revival point? Xiaoying said a whole sentence, which was rare for her. Feng Buji's eyes moved, and he had a higher opinion of this mysterious female cultivator. To be able to be so calm in such a dangerous moment, one could see how tough her heart was. Then be careful. Feng Buji nodded. Turtle Feng, what are you doing down there? Come up. You're ranked 2nd in the Nankuan Empire, but do you only know how to talk? Ru Xiaoxing saw that Feng Buji was hesitating, so he took the chance to mock him. Swoosh! A light flashed, and Xiaoying appeared 10 meters in front of Ru Xiaoxing. I can deal with trash like you. I don't need you, Xiaoying said calmly. Wonderful book house. Chapter 830. Ru Xiaoxing was slightly stunned. He did not expect Feng Buji to not fight, and instead sent a little girl he had never seen before. I can't believe the rumors are true, haha. Ru Xiaoxing glanced at Xiaoying and laughed. What rumors? Xiaoying asked calmly. Don't you know? Everyone knows now that in-guns male cultivators are a bunch of freeloaders who can only rely on the protection of female cultivators. Only in-guns top 10 has more female cultivators than male cultivators. Not long ago, there was a battle between the top 10 prodigies in Capital Number 5. In the end, in-guns male cultivators were all slaughtered, and only the female cultivators were left. Magic Blue Yarn, that be *TCH, had to use a teleportation formation to escape with another female cultivator. It's a well-known fact. Ru Xiaoxing's voice was like a wave as he replied sarcastically. Male cultivators or female cultivators, they're all cultivators. What's the difference? Xiaoying did not think much of it. There's no difference. It's just that in-guns men are too weak, and this generation is even more cowardly. None of them are good enough. In-guns women are the best. TSK. Being in-guns man is quite a blessing. Ru Xiaoxing mocked. After all that talk, you think in-guns women are too strong, and you don't dare to fight me? Xiaoying could not stand this guy who spoke in a sarcastic manner. She could not help but provoke him. If you were one of the girls in the top 10 of the Namkuan top 10, I wouldn't mind saying that. But a little girl like you, I'll make you cry for your mother anytime. Ru Xiaoxing scoffed. Is that so? So you're very strong? Xiao Ying's eyes were emotionless as she tilted her head. Little girl, you don't even know who I am, and you dare to fight for turtle foam. I really don't know where your courage comes from. Ru Xiaoxing said coldly. Whoosh. Just as Ru Xiaoxing was speaking, Xiao Ying's figure suddenly blurred and disappeared. Ru Xiaoxing's pupils shrunk as he felt his back tighten. He swung the fan in his hand behind him. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out. A deep freeze dagger was blocked by the folding fan when it was less than 3 inches away from Ru Xiaoxing's back. Ru Xiaoxing's heart trembled. He had almost fallen. Damn it, you ambushed me. Xiao Ying disappeared again. Whoosh whoosh. 2 rays of light flashed. Ru Xiaoxing blocked in a fluster and immediately flew back several dozen meters. He was actually unable to keep up with this female cultivator's speed. Xiao Ying's current strength was no longer the same as before. After Li Daochong injected a drop of phoenix blood essence into her, her spirit body had already reached large success. Apart from that, his strength and speed were greatly increased. At the same time, he also developed a divine ability, the Flash Escape Technique. This divine ability could achieve an effect similar to teleportation over a short distance, but it had to be within a range of 100 meters. Beyond this distance, there would be no such effect. Ru Xiaoxing was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that this seemingly ordinary little girl would be so powerful. His face suddenly changed, and he activated his spiritual gang. He didn't dare to underestimate the enemy anymore. Little girl, who are you? I, Ru Xiaoxing, don't bully nameless people. Ru Xiaoxing felt that he seemed to have gotten a little carried away and forgot to ask for her name. With this girl's skills, it was unlikely that she was an ordinary person. Do you think you can bully me? If I'm bullied by someone like you, wouldn't I disgrace my master's reputation? Xiao Ying said disdainfully. Who is your master? Ru Xiaoxing asked. You don't deserve to know my master's name. Xiao Ying's face was filled with pride. As long as she thought of Li Daochong, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in her heart. Ru Xiaoxing's face darkened, and he muttered, You talk big. I like to see what your master taught you. Don't let me down. Mountain come. The folding fan danced, and a mountain range drawn with ink on the fan flew out from inside. It turned into a real mountain and rushed toward Xiao Ying. Insignificant skill, Xiao Ying sneered. She was least afraid of this kind of divine ability. Although it had great lethality, it was useless in front of her flash escape technique. Whoosh! Xiao Ying disappeared. In the next moment, she appeared 100 meters away. However, Xiao Ying still hadn't left the range of the small mountain. Unexpectedly, the small mountain was still growing bigger. Xiao Ying's expression changed. She stretched out her hand, and a short saber less than 2 feet long appeared in her hand. This was the heaven-profound great magic treasure Li Daochong gave her, the heaven-shattering saber. It had the attribute of true fire. The first layer of the 9 split saber arts, crushing rocks and splitting earth. Whoosh! The saber ray was like a crescent moon as it shot out. Boom! The small mountain was cut in half by the saber. Xiao Ying passed through the middle. What? Ru Xiaoxing's eyes widened. Although this wasn't a very powerful divine ability, its power was enough to kill most cultivators below the void refinement realm. He didn't expect that this little girl wouldn't be able to dodge in time and would hastily cut the mountain in half. Xiao Ying's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't the 9 split saber arts supposed to cut stars and suns? Why would she be afraid of a small mountain? Her first reaction was to dodge, and she didn't have enough confidence in herself. Water come. Ru Xiaoxing waved the folding fan in his hand again. This time, the rolling river in the fan poured down like a flood breaking through a dam. Come, Xiao Ying shouted softly this time. She didn't show any fear anymore. The second layer of the 9 split saber arts. The mountain collapses and the earth shatters. Whoosh! The saber ray was like an arc of light that swept across the void. The flood was cut in half. It seemed as if the void was cut in half. The two sides seemed to be on par with each other. However, Ru Xiaosheng had already lost by half. After all, he was the main attacker. He used the divine ability twice. Not only was it useless, but it was also a waste of his spiritual power. Zhu Xiaoyu's eyes flickered. She looked at Xiao Ying with interest. She didn't expect that there would be another expert besides Feng Buji. Miss, this girl is obviously using a cultivation technique, but she can fight against a divine ability. She's not simple, Sir God Hacker said leisurely. That's not a cultivation technique, but a divine ability. It's just that it used to be a cultivation technique. If it was a cultivation technique, it wouldn't have been able to break Ru Xiaosheng's art of making something out of nothing. Miss, you're right. I'm blind. However, doesn't this little girl already have the strength of the void training stage? But her aura hasn't reached the void training stage yet, Sir God Hacker said confusedly. She's a body-refining cultivator and a very special bloodline inheritor. She has the smell of a divine beast. Her spiritual power is running inside her body, and she doesn't release it. Therefore, I don't think her cultivation is high. Of course, she hasn't reached the void training stage. She's only at the late stage of the divine transformation stage, Zhu Xiaoyu explained. What do you mean by the late stage of the divine transformation stage? Miss, Ru Xiaosheng isn't an ordinary cultivator. He's at the early stage of the void training stage, and his combat power is close to the peak of the void training stage. Even a cultivator at the late stage of the divine transformation stage wouldn't be his match, Sir God Hacker said in surprise. Nothing is impossible. You've said it yourself. Ru Xiaosheng's strength is close to the peak of the void training stage. That girl is also a genius with combat power beyond her level. Her combat power is at least at the late stage of the void training stage, which isn't much different from Ru Xiaosheng. In terms of combat experience and combat reaction, she's better than Ru Xiaosheng, Zhu Xiaoyu said with a smile. Sir God Hacker looked at Xiao Ying with a sense of mystery in his eyes. He was curious about the master she had mentioned earlier. As the saying goes, a famous master produces a brilliant disciple. If the disciple was powerful, the master would definitely not be a nobody. Miss, does this girl's master have a great background? I don't know. Even I can't see through it. I've never seen the blade technique she used before, Zhu Xiaoyu said while shaking her head. While the two of them were talking, Ru Xiaosheng fanned himself again. In the painting, a bright moon appeared out of nowhere. Although it wasn't as big as the real moon, it still fell from the sky like a huge meteorite. Xiao Ying slashed with her blade. The third stage of the 9 splits saber art. Earth splitting and sea sinking slashed open again. It's my turn now. Xiao Ying's eyes lit up. After slashing with the short blade in her hand, she slashed again. The fourth stage of the 9 splits saber art, heaven-shattering slash. Chapter 831. Xiao Ying's figure flashed and appeared more than 10 meters away from Ru Xiaosheng in an instant. She slashed down with her saber at a tricky angle with great power. Zong! The saber radiance was dozens of feet long. It vaguely resembled Li Daocheng's 9-crack saber technique when he had mastered it. Xiao Ying had endured hardships for many years and had never forgotten what she had said to Li Daocheng back then. She had never slacked off. Ever since Li Daocheng had given her pointers, she had always imagined that one day she would be able to fulfill her promise to her master. In addition to her promise, Xiao Ying also had a very high goal. After seeing the almost invincible Li Daocheng at the entrance test, she had decided to follow this man. Not for anything else, but for the cultivation path. From the moment Xiao Ying had made up her mind, she had never doubted Li Daocheng. In her eyes, her master was the best in the world. Whether he was or not, he was in her heart, and Li Daocheng did not let her down. Not only that, but he had even exceeded Xiao Ying's imagination. As a representative of a one-track mind, ever since Xiao Ying acknowledged Li Daocheng as her master, she would definitely follow the latter brainlessly. A teacher for a day was a father for life. Xiao Ying firmly believed in the ancient saying. However, even if she was so superstitious about Li Daocheng, she did not expect the latter's strength to grow to such a terrifying extent. Li Daocheng's growth speed was beyond the limit of Xiao Ying's imagination. This allowed Xiao Ying's goal to become even more lofty, but at the same time, it was also extremely clear. Xiao Ying had always been hard-working and diligent. All the sweat she had put in over the years was vividly reflected in this saber move. "Master, did you see that? I really hope you can give me some pointers." Xiao Ying silently thought in her heart when she slashed out with a heaven-breaking slash. At this moment, she was like a student who wanted to be praised by her teacher. Ru Xiaoxing's eyes were filled with shock. He never would have thought that this unfamiliar little girl in front of him would actually be more formidable with each slash. There seemed to be no end to it. The first 3 strikes were already stunning enough. Not only did the 4th strike show no signs of reaching the end, it had even undergone a qualitative change. If the first 3 slashes were like raging waves, then this slash was enough to shake the heavens and earth. Ru Xiaoxing couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine, feeling that something wasn't right. This girl definitely wasn't a nobody. Could it be that he had offended someone he shouldn't have offended? This was too much of a scam. Could it be that this girl was in the top 10 of Nam Cohen top 10? But that's not right. I've never heard of any of Ngun's powerful fellows using swords. Hundreds of thousands of thoughts flashed through Ru Xiaoxing's mind in an instant, but he didn't have the time to think too much. Covering the sky and the earth, Ru Xiaoxing shouted. The folding fan in his hand suddenly enlarged, as if it had appeared out of thin air. A huge folding fan that was a few square kilometers in size appeared out of thin air, laying horizontally a few meters in front of Ru Xiaoxing. No description could describe the speed at which the two switched between offense and defense. In short, it had already surpassed the limit of what the naked eye could see. Even the powerful perception of divine telekinesis couldn't keep up. Unless one's divine telekinesis was stronger and more sensitive than late void refinement stage, they wouldn't know what was going on. Everything in front of them had already happened. Clang, crack, crack, bang. The sword ray struck the huge folding fan head-on, erupting with a deafening sound, followed by a series of roars that tugged at one's heartstrings. The entire space seemed to be trembling, and the swamp below that was tens of kilometers in radius rolled violently, as if it was being stirred up by a giant hand. With a buzzing sound, the airwaves rolled, and the shockwave rebounded like a tsunami. Xiao Ying flew back a few hundred meters before she could stop herself. There was a deep slash mark on the huge folding fan, and the weakest part of it was almost cut off. However, it didn't break in the end. Ru Xiaoxing retreated a few meters, but his body was shaken and almost suffered internal injuries. Looking at the 100 treasure fan that he was most proud of having a deep mark on it, his heart was bleeding. What kind of ability could leave a mark on a Sky Xian Peak grade treasure? It was unbelievable, especially when the opponent's cultivation was only late void refinement stage. It was even more unbelievable. After all, Ru Xiaoxing was ranked 9th on the Qiansong Heaven's Pride ranking, and with his talent, he naturally saw through Xiao Ying's cultivation. However, it was better not to see through it, as it would hurt his pride. Ru Xiaoxing never dreamed that a random little girl he met would be so terrifying. If he knew, he wouldn't have stepped forward even if he was beaten to death. At this moment, Ru Xiaoxing's intestines were green with regret. He originally thought that Feng Buji's group of Ngun contestants wouldn't have any other experts apart from Feng Buji, who knew that not only were they experts, but they were also so strong. "Master, Xiao Ying has embarrassed you. I couldn't break through that trash's defense with one slash, and I was even forced back." A trace of regret appeared in Xiao Ying's eyes, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye and was replaced by a look of determination. There was no hesitation. The 5th stage of the 9 split blade art, Star Slash. After collapsing the sky, it was time to slash the stars. Wasn't the purpose of breaking through the sky to see the vast stars? However, if the stars were in the way, then it would be slashed as well. Different from the previous 4 slashes, the Star Slash's slash was a flash of light. It was like a star that suddenly shone in the sky, radiating brilliance in all directions instead of straight line. Ru Xiaosheng had just put away his folding fan, thinking that this wave could at least be buffered. Who knew that the next wave of attacks would come so quickly, so much so that he wasn't prepared at all? Missy, this little girl is too fierce. If I were to meet her, I might not be her opponent. Sir God Hacker couldn't believe it and almost shouted out, "She's not your opponent. Ru Xiaosheng deserves to be unlucky. That little girl's blade technique just so happens to counter him, or else he wouldn't be so passive." If other prodigies of the same level as Ru Xiaosheng were to meet this little girl, they should be able to win within 10 moves. Zhu Xiaoyu said calmly, "Is that so?" Sir God Hacker rarely doubted his master. The blade technique's power was really frightening. Moreover, every slash had hidden force. If one wasn't careful, they would be shaken until they were dizzy. If one was weak, they would be directly shattered. Damn it, Ru Xiaosheng cursed. He didn't have time to think and released his folding fan again. He had more than one magic treasure and more than one technique. However, his other techniques were not as good as the 100 Treasures fan. No matter what, Ru Xiaosheng couldn't embarrass himself in front of so many people. He had to block the little girl's attack, even if he had to risk his life. He used the earth-shattering technique again. This time, 2 white lights shot out from the sleeves of Ru Xiaosheng's Confucian robe. The 2 white gentlemen swords flew out. They were Ru Xiaosheng's most powerful magic treasures apart from the 100 Treasures fan. Boom! The star-like blade slashed the 100 Treasures fan again, causing an even more violent vibration than before. Crack! A crack appeared in the 100 Treasures fan, and then it completely broke. Puff! Ru Xiaosheng spat out a mouthful of blood. This time, his internal organs were shaken and blood rushed to his throat. He couldn't suppress it, even if he wanted to. Xiaoying wasn't any better. She didn't have time to dodge the slash and was stabbed by the 2 gentlemen's swords. Fortunately, Xiaoying had dodging techniques, so she wasn't stabbed in her vitals. However, there were many superficial wounds. There were 2 shocking wounds on her arm and back that were so deep that bone could be seen. Although Jiushuan wasn't dead in the God Realm, other than that, everything else was the same as in the outside world. Only when she died and went to the resurrection point would she start over. Otherwise, whether she was injured or poisoned, it would be incomparably painful. It would be even more uncomfortable than in the outside world. Who is your master? Ru Xiaosheng fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and asked again. My master is someone you can never provoke. Don't ask anymore. You really don't have the qualifications to know. There's an ancient saying that a great master produces a great disciple. I've only learned a little of my master's skills, and yet I've already forced you, the 9th-ranked genius of Qiantsong continent, to this extent. How powerful is my master? You can imagine it yourself. The battle between us isn't over yet. Take this. Xiaoying was seriously injured, but she didn't even frown. She completely ignored the 2 deep wounds on her body. She held the heaven-shattering saber, and her eyes moved. The 6th layer of the 9 split saber arts, sun-shattering slash. Chapter 832. Xiaoying raised her saber and used the sun-splitting slash. Ru Xiaosheng was the first opponent to make Xiaoying use 6 saber moves in a row since she mastered the 9-split saber technique. It was clear that Ru Xiaosheng was not a nobody and was very powerful. However, when Xiaoying fought, she never considered her opponent's strength. She just fought. Ru Xiaosheng felt bitter. Meeting this kind of opponent, who pressed forward courageously, gave him a headache. The 100 Treasures fan was already broken. No matter how much defensive power it could display, it could only be used one more time. The 100 Treasures fan opened once again, and the 2 gentlemen swords flew out again. Boom! The 100 Treasures fan was cut in half by the saber ray. Ru Xiaosheng was already prepared. He raised a prismatic shield in his hand, and the remaining saber ray hit it. With a bang, Ru Xiaosheng was sent flying several hundred meters away. The 2 gentlemen's swords were blocked by Xiaoying with one arm, but the price was that her arm was cut off. Very few people would use this kind of suicidal fighting method, to exchange injury for injury. Xiaoying had no other choice. It was not that she did not want to live, but that Ru Xiaosheng was indeed stronger than her. From the very first second of the battle, Ru Xiaosheng's four directions domain had been activated, trapping Xiaoying inside. If Xiaoying had not fought with all her might, she would have been defeated long ago. This time, Xiaoying's injuries were even more serious. Losing an arm greatly affected her battle prowess. Although Ru Xiaosheng was not much better off, at least his limbs were still intact. He had only suffered internal injuries. After losing an arm, Xiaoying's cold eyes did not change in the slightest. It was as if the arm was not hers. This kind of endurance was rare in the world. Ru Xiaosheng gained the upper hand for the first time. He could not help but feel a bit proud. While Xiaoying and Ru Xiaosheng were fighting, Li Daochong followed the scent of the silver bottle that his spiritual sense had sensed and rushed through the void. When the thousand-sound escape was activated, his speed could reach 1/3 of the speed of light. This speed was already comparable to the extreme speed of a late-stage, tribulation passing stage cultivator. Void refining stage cultivators could not compare. With great difficulty, Li Daochong finally detected the aura of the silver bottle. His heart was burning with anxiety, and as time passed, his worry for the silver bottle grew even more intense. Mu Wanrong's group of 6 was clearly having a hard time dealing with more than 10 giant miasma monsters. A sense of weakness spread through everyone. Senior Marshal Sister Mu, we've been deeply poisoned. Kong Wu, who was fighting against a giant miasma monster, transmitted his voice. Get ready to retreat. Mu Wanrong immediately ordered. However, the 5 competitors from Green Sun Alchemy were unable to break free from the entanglement of the giant tentacles. Seeing this, Mu Wanrong had no choice but to prepare to make a move. However, at this moment, 2 powerful spiritual auras swept over. A man and a woman flew over. The male cultivator was wearing a limited edition illusionary demon battle armor. He had a cynical look on his face, and there was a hint of frivolity between his sword-like eyebrows. He stared at Mu Wanrong from head to toe. The female cultivator's appearance was peerless, and her expression was cold. He couldn't tell the origin of her pink Taoist robe, but her rank was definitely not low, because the aura on her body was even stronger than that of the male cultivator. When Mu Wanrong saw the two of them, her eyelids couldn't help but twitch slightly. Song Yuan Song, Yu Qing Yao, the two of you also came in to join in the fun. Song Yuan Song chuckled. Miss Mu, I had a premonition that you were in danger, so I specially came to share your burden. His words were not sincere, and it was obvious that he was trying to bluff her. Mu Wanrong didn't take it to heart, but she really needed help now. She still had to conserve her strength, and unless it was absolutely necessary, she wouldn't easily take action. Thank you, fellow Taoist Song. Please take care of these tentacle monsters. Song Yuan Song didn't expect Mu Wanrong to accept it. His original intention was just to curry favor with Mu Wanrong. Words spoken were like spilled water, and it couldn't be taken back. Song Yuan Song was unwilling, but he had to take action. However, he wouldn't do it for nothing. Song Yuan Song's eyes turned, and he looked at the long saber floating in front of Mu Wanrong. He said, Miss Mu, let me borrow your saber. Mu Wanrong could tell what Song Yuan Song was thinking, but she didn't mind. This wasn't something that belonged to her in the first place. Catch! Mu Wanrong's psyche power moved, and the long saber flew to Song Yuan Song. Smack! Song Yuan Song caught it firmly. Good saber. Miss Mu, just wait to eat the giant grilled squid. As he spoke, Song Yuan Song flew down with the long saber in his hand. Without any fancy moves, he swept past the twitching giant tentacles. With a flash of light, 3 giant tentacles were instantly chopped off. The pressure on Kong Wu, Yu Li, and Chun Feng, who were in the midst of a bitter battle, instantly lessened. Song Yuan Song could have ended the battle quickly, with his strength ranked 10th on the Jade Clear Upper Void Prodigy list. He naturally didn't care about the dozen or so giant miasma monsters. However, as long as there was a beauty in front of him, he would feel uncomfortable if he didn't show off a little. The first saber was clean and neat, but the second saber changed its style, and it was called flirtatious. He spun 360 degrees in the air, bringing along a spiritual highland whirlwind, and aimed at one of the giant tentacles, splitting it vertically from top to bottom. How is this a battle? He was clearly showing off. Song Yunsong's action immediately angered the giant miasma monster, and dozens of giant tentacles danced wildly. Ah! A scream was heard. Not far from Chen Feng, a Green Sun contestant was ruthlessly whipped by a giant tentacle, and his waist let out a scream. Before that contestant's scream ended, another giant tentacle swept over and directly took him to the resurrection point. Chen Feng was shocked and hurriedly flew up into the sky, narrowly avoiding the violent attacks of the giant tentacles. Another Green Sun contestant wasn't so lucky, and he was also crushed by more than 10 giant tentacles and was also sent to the resurrection point. Mu Wanrong saw that something was wrong and said, "Fellow Taoist Song, please quickly kill these beasts." "Miss Mu, I'm killing them," Song Yuansong answered with a serious expression. Yu Qingyao, who came with Song Yuansong, frowned slightly and said coldly, "Song, now is not the time for you to flirt with girls and show off. Get down to business, quickly end it, or I'll leave first." Hearing this, Song Yuansong hurriedly said, "Miss Yu, please don't be impatient. Yuansong will finish the battle immediately." As he spoke, Song Yuansong's aura suddenly rose, and rays of saber light slashed through the air. Pa pa pa! The giant tentacles were all cut off and fell into the muddy water of the swamp. In a short while, more than 10 giant miasma monsters were easily killed by Song Yuansong, and even the gray fog surrounding them was blown away by the saber chi. The weakness in their bodies was instantly reduced by more than half. Yu Qingyao and Mu Wanrong's expressions changed, and the two looked at Song Yuansong with a bit more seriousness. Although this guy was frivolous, he wasn't a good-for-nothing. He still had strength, and his combat strength was unpredictable. At this time, the two girls were thinking about how to deal with Song Yuansong if they were to fight him. Kong Wu, Yu Li, and Chen Feng looked at Song Yuansong with fear in their eyes. They fought together for a long time, but they couldn't do anything to the giant miasma monsters, and they were almost killed. Song Yuansong killed the giant miasma monster without much effort. It was as simple as chopping up a squid in the sea. After a while, the gap between them was huge. The strength of the top 10 on the prodigy roll was really impressive, and they weren't people they could compete with. "Miss Yu, how was it? I didn't waste your time, did I?" Song Yuansong looked at Yu Qingyao with an indescribable light in his eyes, as if he wanted to crawl into Yu Qingyao's arms. "Where did the saber in your hand come from?" Suddenly, a faint voice came from the void not far away. Yu Qingyao, Mu Wanrong, and Song Yuansong's hearts jumped at the same time. Someone was so close, but they didn't notice at all. If it wasn't for the voice, they wouldn't have sensed anyone nearby. Chapter 833. Yu Qingyao's beautiful face was filled with surprise. Apart from the three great geniuses, there was someone else who could approach her so close without making a sound. Mu Wanrong was also surprised. She could not help but look at the young man who had suddenly appeared. Li Daochong flew all the way and used the 1,000-sound escape technique. It took him less than 10 seconds to arrive here. His aura was restrained, and he was as silent as a ray of light. If one did not have a divine sense above the peak of the combination realm, it would be impossible to detect his presence. Song Yuansong turned his head and saw a handsome young cultivator in a purple robe in the void that had been empty just now. Song Yuansong's eyes moved slightly. This person was very unfamiliar. He did not remember such a person. "What's wrong? Do you fancy this saber?" Song Yuansong played with the saber in his hand and asked with interest. "That's the weapon of a friend of mine," Li Daochong said slowly, without the slightest hint of emotion. "A friend?" Song Yuansong was a little surprised. He looked at Mu Wanrong and asked, "Wanrong, do you know this fellow Taoist?" Mu Wanrong raised her eyebrows slightly. She had obtained this saber by killing a contestant in Imperial Capital Number 2 a few months ago. She had used it for a while. Although she had not completely mastered the saber, it was very practical for now. The passive defense of this saber was very strong. Even super experts like Song Yuansong and Yu Qingyao had a hard time dealing with the gray fog in the dead swamp. They could not even completely block it. However, she could use this saber to completely isolate herself from the gray fog. The weakening poison of the dead swamp did not have much effect on her. The level of this saber was definitely not low. As time passed, the competition would become more and more cruel. The more protection she had, the more likely she would be to improve her ranking. In the Jiushuan realm of the gods, what was snatched was hers. This was the rule of the competition. I don't know him. Mu Wanrong's voice was slightly cold. She did not know where this person came from. It was very likely that he had seen through the saber and wanted to snatch it. Song Yuansong narrowed his eyes when he heard that he did not know him. He was not a novice in the cultivation world. His thoughts coincided with Mu Wanrong's. There were many cultivators who found excuses to snatch treasures. This trick was not new. Fellow Taoist, I'm sorry, but the owner of this saber doesn't know you. The dead swamp is very dangerous, and it's getting late. Fellow Taoist, please take your leave. I won't see you out. Song Yuansong's tone of voice changed slightly. From the moment Li Daochong appeared, his gaze had been fixed on the silver moon blade in Song Yuansong's hand. He had given it to Yin Ping. Perhaps there were similar Dharma treasures, but the spirit patterns on the silver moon saber were added later. This saber had been with the silver bottle for many years, and the silver bottle's spirit energy fluctuations and smell had long been left on it. Therefore, it was impossible for him to be mistaken. Your friend is not the owner of this saber. Fellow Taoist, please give this saber to me. This saber has a special usage, and it is useless for you to keep it, Li Daochong said calmly. At this moment, Li Daochong's spiritual force had already entered the saber. He wanted to find clues about the silver bottle. As for the people present, he did not pay attention to them at all. Fellow Taoist, do you think it's true just because you say so? According to what you're saying, can I say that the magic treasure isn't yours, but my friend's? Can you hand it over now? Song Yuansong said impatiently. Whoosh! Li Daochong's figure suddenly disappeared into the void. Yu Qingyao, Song Yuansong, and Mu Wanrong's eyes widened. The three of them did not see how this person moved. In half a blink of an eye, the purple-robed young man appeared in front of Song Yuansong, as if he had teleported. Ha! Before Song Yuansong could react, the saber in his hand disappeared. When he looked again, it was already in the purple-robed young man's hand. Li Daochong acted as if nothing had happened. He held the saber and carefully observed it. Other than Yin Ping's aura, there were at least 3 faint traces of spirit energy left on it. In other words, in the past half a year in the divine realm of Jiushuan, this saber had passed through the hands of at least 3 people besides Yin Ping. Li Daochong's eyes flashed coldly. Something had indeed happened to Yin Ping. Could it be that he had been forced to stay in the resurrection point and did not dare to come out? As this thought flashed through his mind, Li Daochong looked up into the distance. It was said that the resurrection point was in a very special area in the divine realm of Jiushuan. It was exactly the same distance from the 9 great imperial capitals. If it was at the resurrection point, it would make sense that he could not sense Yin Ping's aura. Li Daochong's pupils shrank. How could he have neglected the resurrection point during this period of time? Fellow Taoist, are you trying to rob me? Song Yuansong's eyes were filled with anger, and his body's spirit energy began to spin. Song Yuansong was most afraid of losing face in front of women, although he was somewhat afraid of the purple-robed young man in front of him. After all, his speed was unimaginably fast. His aura was not strong. His speed was probably fast because he had cultivated some profound escape technique, or he had the support of some Shintian spirit meridian. It was not surprising that the contestants who could enter the finals, regardless of their cultivation level, had 1 or 2 powerful magical powers. Li Daochong, who was thinking, was pulled back to reality by Song Yuansong's words. He looked up and said lightly, "It's returned to its rightful owner." "What do you mean by robbing me?" "Fellow Taoist, I just said that it's yours." "Do you think it's yours just because you said so?" "In this way, as long as you say it's yours, everything in the world will be yours. Put down the knife, or don't blame me for being rude." Song Yuansong's spirit energy vortex became more and more violent. Li Daochong frowned. When he was about to speak, he felt a chill on his back. He dodged in an instant, and a silver light flashed by. Mu Wanrong directly attacked him from behind. A cold, flying sword pierced through the air as fast as lightning. If Li Daochong did not have the magical power of Thousand Sound Escape, his body would have been pierced through. Yu Qingyao had always hated cultivators who snatched treasures for no reason. Seeing Mu Wanrong make a move, she didn't hesitate to attack as well. Countless 3-inch bean needles turned into a rain of needles and shot towards Li Daochong. Although these bean needles were powerful, they were not of much use in front of Li Daochong's super high speed. Li Daochong dodged the flying sword. The moment he appeared, he disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already 1,000 meters above the void. Mu Wanrong and Yu Qingyao were both super geniuses ranked in the top 10 of their respective empires' genius list. There was no doubt about their strength, and they were extraordinarily strong. In the eyes of most young practitioners, they were freaks who could annihilate them with a raise of their hands. But the two of them attacked at the same time, and it was a sneak attack. They did not succeed. If they could not see that the young man in purple who suddenly appeared was not ordinary, they would lose their identity as Tianjiao. Song Yuansong naturally saw that Li Daochong was not ordinary. He was a little scared, but at this moment, he had to shoot the arrow. The two female cultivators had already taken action. If he, a man, was scared of the three of them together, he would not be able to survive in the future. As soon as Li Daochong appeared in the sky, Song Yuansong's spirit energy seemed to be burning, and a bronze long sword appeared in his hand. The Song family was the descendant of a super sword sect in ancient times, and all the members of the family were sword cultivators. Chapter 834. Song Yuansong did not dare to be careless. He immediately activated his true spirit and attacked Li Daochong with his sword. Li Daochong dodged continuously. He was a little annoyed. He had been tolerating them, but they still attacked him. "Oomph!" Li Daochong snorted. He waved his finger in the air, and a purple ray of light rose into the air. Using his finger as a blade and his chi as a guide, he used a divine ability at will. Song Yuansong held the green sun sword in his hand and slashed out. With a terrifying sword rainbow, he used the Song family's most powerful ancient divine ability, the 9th stage of the heavenly fairy, visitor from heavens. Zung, the sky-covering brilliance illuminated the dead swamp. Song Yuansong saw that the purple-robed young man could not dodge and hurriedly attacked with his bare hands. He could not help but smile contemptuously. "Kid, you're dead." Yu Qingyao and Mu Wanrong were shocked. They knew that Song Yuansong was very powerful. After all, he was a demon ranked 10th on the prodigy roll. However, Song Yuansong had not fought with anyone in recent years. The most recent time was 2 years ago when he sparred with a peak void refinement realm cultivator. Both of them did not use their full strength. Based on the strength that Song Yuansong displayed at that time, the officials of the Jade Clear Upper Void Realm raised his ranking on the prodigy roll by 3 places. He went from the original 13th place to the 10th place. Do not underestimate the change of 3 places. This kind of jump was much more difficult than 1,000 places at the bottom. The top 10 was on another level. At that time, it caused quite a commotion. Song Yuansong had officially entered the sights of spirit venerables. However, when the two women saw Song Yuansong unleash his full power, they were completely stunned. If they were to fight Song Yuansong, they might not be his match. This playful young master was actually so powerful. His actions had blinded everyone's eyes. Song Yuansong won. Yu Qingyao muttered to herself. Mu Wanrong nodded slightly. She looked surprised and bitter. Even Song Yuansong was so powerful. The competition was getting more and more difficult. Bang! Boom! The purple ray and the sword ray collided fiercely. Instantly, a terrifying shockwave exploded. The gray fog that pervaded the deathly silent swamp was blown away, and the swamp became clear and translucent. The shockwave flattened everything within a radius of tens of kilometers. Song Yuan Song smiled proudly. The Song family's flying immortal from outer heaven was a peerless sword technique that had been passed down since ancient times. He had already practiced it to the 9th level, which even his family did not know. He wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat in this competition. Just now, when he saw how powerful the purple-clothed young man was, he had no choice but to use this trump card just to be safe. Song. Just as Song Yuansong's smile appeared, the purple radiance split the sword radiance apart. He only felt a flash in front of his eyes. No! Song Yuansong only managed to utter a single word before the purple light pierced through his body and split him in half. Song Yuansong's eyes gradually separated from his body in disbelief. Then his body began to swell from the inside out. Boom! Boom! The two halves of his body exploded at the same time and were sent to the resurrection point. Li Daochong used his telekinesis to collect all the items that Song Yuansong had dropped into his storage ring. As for his battle merits, they soared to over 900,000. Li Daochong did not expect this guy to have so many battle merits. In his eyes, Song Yuansong's strength was not that great. After seeing the true monstrous strength of Feng Qichong, Li Daochong's standards had naturally improved. Yin Feng's strength was also far above this guy's. Although the divine ability he had just released was indeed impressive, it was still not enough to make him a true expert. Hiss! Yu Qingyao and Mu Wanrong both gasped at the same time. They never would have dreamed that Song Yuansong, who had unleashed such a terrifying divine ability, would be so easily killed by the purple-clothed young man. To be more precise, it was an instant kill. It was as easy as blowing off dust. The two women's minds went blank. The scene before their eyes had already surpassed their understanding. The divine ability that the purple-clothed young man had used did not seem very powerful. How could a broken Song Yuansong sword? Yu Qingyao and Mu Wanrong were already in such a state, let alone Kong Wu and Yuli. Qin Feng was completely dumbfounded. The five of them instantly felt an invisible pressure on their faces. They felt like they would be killed in seconds. They were so powerful that they were like unarmed civilians facing a fully armed special force. They had no resistance at all. Who the hell are you? Yu Qingyao's heart was in turmoil. She was even afraid. However, as the 7th on the Yu Qing Taishu Republic's prodigy roll, she could not back down. She forced herself to ask coldly, "You've been asking me who I'm all this while. Li, you're very curious. Didn't the person who asked you to kill Li give you a spiritual simulation?" Li Daochong could not help but find it funny. Currently, the Zhoushuan realm of the gods were encircling the participants from the An Kuan Empire. Their final target was Li Daochong. However, along the way, Li Daochong had met countless participants. None of them recognized him. It was obvious that these people did not know what Li Daochong looked like. However, they were all shouting that they wanted to kill Li Daochong. Yu Qingyao and Mu Wanrong were both stunned. They looked at Li Daochong with even more confusion. They naturally understood the meaning behind Li Daochong's words, but they couldn't believe that the purple-robed young man who could instantly kill Song Yuansong was the same Li Daochong that Han Po was searching from the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. They had always thought that Li Daochong was a despicable and sinister young cultivator who had used some underhanded trick to ambush the participants of the 10,000 Wonders Talisman. Actually, his own strength would not be that strong. He was probably just a thievish-looking thief. She couldn't imagine that Li Daochong would be this handsome, carefree, and elegant young cultivator in a purple robe. Their imagination and reality could not be overlapped. "You are Li Daochong?" Mu Wanrong asked in disbelief. Li Daochong looked down and did not answer. He only said, "You said this saber is yours?" Mu Wanrong's heart skipped a beat. She had forgotten about this. She had only thought that this young man in purple was using this as an excuse to steal the treasure. However, it seemed that this young man was telling the truth. With his strength, if he wanted to steal the treasure, there was no need to find a random excuse. He could just kill. Mu Wanrong braced herself and said, "That's right." Li Daocheng's eyes were cold. "You are lying. This saber was given to a friend by Mr. Li. How could it be yours? Before today, Mr. Li has never seen you. If you don't want to go to the resurrection point, then tell me how you obtained this saber. Otherwise, don't blame Mr. Li for killing you." As he spoke, Li Daocheng's aura was completely different from before. A terrifying spiritual aura pressure pressed down on Mu Wanrong and the others like a landslide. They were already scared to the point that their hearts were trembling. When they felt the pressure, they immediately felt their primordial spirits become unstable. It was extremely uncomfortable, and even floating in the air was a bit strenuous. Mu Wanrong swallowed with difficulty. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a complicated brilliance. Her usual pride as a proud daughter of heaven was gone. She did not want to go to the resurrection point. Once the battle merits she had accumulated with great difficulty were reduced by half, her ranking in the first round of the test would definitely plummet. However, being threatened like this, Mu Wanrong's self-esteem forced her to be stubborn and unable to give in. Biting her lower lip, Mu Wanrong stared at Li Daocheng. "Ha!" Before they could react, Li Daocheng had already appeared in front of Mu Wanrong. One hand was firmly clasped around Mu Wanrong's neck. He did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy to the fairer sex. Mu Wanrong felt a huge force on her neck. She felt that her neck was about to break. This was not the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing was that Mu Wanrong's primordial spirit was also being strangled by an invisible hand. In other words, if he really squeezed, he would crush both her primordial spirit and her primordial spirit. There would be nowhere to escape. "Still not going to speak?" Li Daocheng said coldly. Buzz, a faint purple electric light, flashed on his hand. Mu Wanrong groaned. Her forehead was immediately dripping with sweat. She was in extreme pain. The feeling was like being struck by lightning. It was extremely painful. Chapter 835. Kong Wu's eyes turned red when he saw the goddess of his heart being threatened like this. "How dare you? Are you trying to make an enemy out of Qingyang alchemy? Let go of senior sister Mu." Kong Wu roared. "Qingyang alchemy?" Li Daocheng turned to look at Kong Wu and then laughed. "Ha ha! Don't you know that more than half of the Jiuquan divine realm is my enemy?" Yu Qingyao narrowed her eyes slightly, thinking of retreating. Her strength was about the same as Song Yuansong's. Li Daocheng was so strong that she could not deal with him alone. In his fury, Kong Wu rushed toward Li Daocheng with the Dharma treasure in his hand, trying to save Mu Wanrong. Li Daocheng did not do anything, but Kong Wu, who had just flown up, stopped instantly. His face was pale, his eyes rolled, and his inner world collapsed. His essence spirit dissipated. With just a thought, Kong Wu disappeared into the void and went to the resurrection point. Yu Li and Qin Feng were so frightened that they turned and ran. Li Daocheng was not interested in deserters. He only said to Mu Wanrong, "It doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I can find out just by searching your soul." After saying that, Li Daocheng was about to make a move. "Wait a minute, I'll tell you." Mu Wanrong could no longer hold back. Being searched meant death. "If I tell you the origin of this saber, can you let me go?" "Of course," Li Daocheng said straightforwardly. 4 months ago, I killed a participant in Imperial Capital No. 2. It fell from him. Mu Wanrong did not want her previous efforts to go to waste, so she told him the origin of the saber. "Imperial Capital No. 2? Do you still remember that person's appearance?" Li Daocheng asked. "I remember." Mu Wanrong nodded with certainty. "Good. As long as you lead me to this person, I'll let you go," Li Daocheng said. "You." Mu Wanrong did not expect the conditions to change in the blink of an eye. He had clearly said that he would let her go if she told him the origin of the saber. "Didn't you say that you would let me go if I told you the origin of the saber?" "Yes, but how do I know if you're telling the truth?" "Do you want me to search your soul to prove it?" Li Daocheng retorted. Mu Wanrong was suddenly speechless. Obviously, even if she swore an oath, it would be useless. Okay, I'll take you there now, Mu Wanrong said. As soon as he finished speaking, his neck loosened. Mu Wanrong was immediately freed from the danger of death. Her small face was deathly pale. Whoosh! A purple electric light shot out and entered Mu Wanrong's body. What did you do to me? Mu Wanrong asked in shock. Don't be nervous. It's just a small safeguard for me. As long as you don't run around, you'll be fine. If you try to run away, that bolt of purple lightning will scatter your soul and soul, Li Daochong said indifferently. Mu Wanrong gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Li Daochong's strength was too strong. He was so strong that she didn't even have a chance to fight back. Yu Qing Yao didn't run away. Seeing that the two had reached a consensus, her beautiful eyes lit up. Dear friend Mu, I'll go with you. Mu Wanrong glanced at Yu Qing Yao gratefully. In this situation, she still didn't run away. Get lost, Li Daochong spat out a word. His voice wasn't loud, yet it was like rumbling thunder in Yu Qing Yao's ears without end, causing her expression to become unsightly to the extreme while her mind droned. She forcefully took in a breath of air and opened up her soul core before she was barely able to resist the sound wave attack. Yu Qing Yao was horrified. She didn't even have the courage to resist. She glared at Li Daochong symbolically. Then, she turned around and flew away without saying a word. Li Daochong was merciful enough. He didn't kill her directly. If he wanted, he could kill Yu Qing Yao with a casual move. Mu Wanrong wanted to kill Li Daochong countless times in her heart, but she didn't dare to show it on her face. Let's go. Mu Wanrong then flew toward the northwest of the dead swamp, followed by Li Daochong. After flying for less than dozens of kilometers, Li Daochong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Wait a minute. Mu Wanrong was puzzled. Is there a problem? Li Daochong didn't even look at Mu Wanrong. He looked at the depths of the dead swamp. It's not too late to go after killing some prey. After saying that, Li Daochong turned around and flew away, not caring about Mu Wanrong at all. What are you doing? Let's see how you can be so arrogant when you meet Han Pe. Do you really think you are invincible? Mu Wanrong muttered fiercely, but her voice was very low. Then she followed in the direction Li Daochong left. When they arrived near the number 3 imperial capital, Li Daochong vaguely felt that Xiaoying was here. Later, when he used his soul to find the whereabouts of the silver bottle, he confirmed that Xiaoying was in the number 3 imperial capital. When Xiaoying appeared outside the dead swamp, Li Daochong sensed her. However, Xiaoying's ranking was at the top of the ranking list, so Li Daochong didn't need to worry about her. Now, among the people around Li Daochong, besides Cherry Blossom Gauze, the strongest one was probably Xiaoying. This girl's growth speed even surprised Li Daochong. She was actually catching up to his cultivation speed. It was too inconceivable. A person's obsession was really strong. After all, Li Daochong had a hot-blooded level-up device, but Xiaoying didn't have anything. Not only that, Xiaoying's talent wasn't high. It could even be considered low. However, this girl was like a madman when it came to cultivation. In her eyes, there was nothing else but cultivation. Of course, it wasn't right to say that Xiaoying didn't have anything. Li Daochong was her golden finger. From the moment he accepted Xiaoying, Li Daochong taught her everything he could. He never lacked equipment and resources, and they were all the best. Indirectly, Xiaoying also had the hot-blooded level-up device. However, just now, Li Daochong's divine sense sensed that Xiaoying was in danger. Her aura was rapidly weakening. In the central area of the dead swamp, Ru Shaoxing finally defeated Xiaoying and successfully removed one of the latter's arms. The difference in cultivation was still too big. If Xiaoying's cultivation could touch the border of the void refinement stage, perhaps the result would be different. Unfortunately, there was no perhaps. Xiaoying's strength at the beginning was actually due to her going all out and using her extreme strength. As long as Ru Shaoxing could hold on, he would have already won. Xiaoying was unwilling. Her beautiful eyes were spitting fire. Defeat was a disgrace. Ru Shaoxing naturally wouldn't miss the opportunity to kill. Under the control of his telekinesis, the two flying swords shot towards Xiao Ying again like lightning. Dodge! Below, Feng Buji couldn't help but shout. Most of the people in Zhu Xiaoyu's group had contemptuous smiles on their faces. Whoosh! Suddenly, there was a slight change in the entire space, but they couldn't tell what the change was. Everyone only felt that their bodies were soft and powerless. They were so weak that it was as if they had just experienced a life and death battle. Huff, huff. The several cultivators beside Feng Buji couldn't help but gasp for breath. They had clearly rested enough. For some reason, they didn't even have the strength to raise their hands. Ru Xiaosheng saw that the flying sword he controlled was about to pierce through the girl who made him lose face, but it stopped less than 3 feet away. The connection between Ru Xiaosheng's divine sense and the flying sword was inexplicably cut off. No matter how he tried, he couldn't sense it. Not only that, Ru Xiaosheng's eyelids were drooping, and sleepiness swept over him for no reason. At the Voiding Realm, cultivators didn't need to sleep at all. The primordial spirit in their bodies was like the sun, constantly replenishing energy for their spiritual bodies. Sleepiness didn't exist. At this moment, Ru Xiaosheng actually tasted sleepiness that he hadn't felt for a long time. The feeling was like an ordinary person who hadn't slept for 3 days and 3 nights. It couldn't be stopped. Puff! Ru Xiaosheng was still fighting the sleepiness when he felt a chill in his chest. He looked down and saw a deep freeze-bone spur piercing through his back and coming out of his chest. What the hell is this? Ru Xiaosheng looked at the bone spur that drilled out of his chest in disbelief. Empty consumption, someone in Zhu Xiaoyu's group exclaimed. Ru Xiaosheng turned around and saw a terrifying, ferocious beast with Hades looking at him with gloomy eyes. It was the bone spur that had pierced into his body. Wu! Nian! Ru Xiaosheng's body kept shriveling as if he had been sucked dry by a vampire. Finally, he disappeared. Chapter 836. Ru Xiaosheng was killed by Su Wei like a chicken, and the others didn't even have time to react. Xiao Ying's injuries were very serious, and she could barely stay afloat in her weakened state. She could barely fly. Su Wei glanced at Xiao Ying, then turned to look at Zhu Xiaoyu and the others. The former was like a lamp without oil, so she didn't have much attraction. Only the big, lively fish were interesting. Su Wei had been lurking in the swamp, watching this group of contestants. His weakened state was swallowing their spirit energy bit by bit. If he didn't feel that one of the female cultivators was very dangerous, he would have come out and started a massacre. It had been a long time since he had so many delicious human souls in his mouth, so he was starving. Zhu Xiaoyu stared at Su Wei, and a hint of excitement appeared in her eyes. This kind of Jiuxuan netherworld item was interesting. The ones she encountered before were weak. Zhu Xiaoyu's group originally had 10 people. Ru Xiaosheng was killed and sent to the resurrection point, so there were only 9 people left. Except for Zhu Xiaoyu and the hacker god, the other 7 people had different levels of strength. However, the weakest was at the peak of soul formation, and the strongest was at the late stage of void refinement. Their cultivation was deeper than Zhu Xiaoyu's, but the strength of their cultivation didn't mean that they were strong. These 7 people were from the Qinsong Empire and the Yuqing Taishi Republic. They were all in the top 30 of the prodigy list. They were all very strong, and Ru Xiaosheng was only considered average among them. The strongest was naturally Guan Tianyu, who was at the late stage of void refinement. He came from the top 10 cultivation company, Wuji Mining. He had the Dragon Emperor Moon Embracing Blade, which was very powerful. He also had the Cloud Jade Robe, a Heaven Mystic High-Grade Robe, the Azure Dragon Battle Robe. After glancing at the few of them, Su Fei didn't say anything and disappeared in a flash. When he appeared again, he was less than 3 meters in front of Guan Tianyu. Guan Tianyu was shocked. He didn't realize that this Jiuxuan underworld demon who had suddenly appeared would prioritize him. Guan Tianyu's hair stood on end. He stretched out his hand, and a magic treasure appeared instantly. As a heavy magic treasure, The Dragon Emperor Moon Embracing Blade had a strong power that ordinary magic treasures didn't have. There was a buzzing sound. There was a muffled sound, and the space seemed to be split open. Su Wei's ferocious face showed a contemptuous smile. He stretched out his hand and easily blocked the blade. What? Guan Tianyu cried out in disbelief. This Ming Mo was actually able to catch his heavy weapon, the Dragon Emperor Moon Seizing Blade, with his bare hands. Those monsters on the Prodigy roll might not be able to withstand it. Guan Tianyu didn't know that in the weakening domain, his strength had been greatly weakened, less than 1% of his strength in the outside world. It wasn't even enough to scratch an itch for him. Eat my sword. Guan Tianyu's junior sister, Guan Xiao, saw that her senior brother was in danger. She drew her sword and stabbed at Su Hao's back. Clang! With a crisp sound, the tough long sword pierced into the bulging back of the skeleton, but it didn't even leave a mark. The sound of metal colliding was ear-piercing. Su Yao did not even look behind him. With a wave of his hand, pung, Guan Xiao was sent flying, falling down like a shooting star. Apart from Guan Xiao, the others also attacked Su Tiao. They naturally knew that if Guan Tianyu was killed, it would be their turn next. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, it was better to attack as a group. Perhaps they would still have a chance of survival. Zhu Xiaoyu and Sir God Hacker didn't do anything. Miss Zhu had always been dismissive of group fights. The 7 of them attacked Su Hao together. With their cooperation, Su Hao was a little overwhelmed. After all, Guan Tianyu was in the late stage of the Void Refinement Realm. In the weakening domain, he could still use some of his strength to stall Su Hao in close combat. The others kept attacking. However, no matter how powerful their divine abilities were, they couldn't cause any effective damage to Su Hao. Boom! With a loud sound, Su Hao shook off the 5 people surrounding him, and Guan Xiao was caught in his hand. Bam! He exerted a little force. Guan Xiao's primordial spirit and the top of her head were crushed. Seeing this, Guan Tianyu let out an angry roar and rushed towards Su Hao crazily. He only attacked and didn't defend. It was obvious that he wanted to perish together with Su Hao. However, just as Guan Tianyu moved, Su Hao had already appeared behind him. The snow-white bone in his hand pierced through Guan Tianyu, as if he was a piece of cardboard. Puff! Guan Tianyu spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't believe that he was so weak and wanted to fight back. However, his body felt as if it had been hollowed out. He couldn't use any strength at all. Su Hao was enjoying himself. Every time he killed a cultivator, he could obtain a large amount of delicious soul power. While having a full meal, one's body would also evolve through the devouring process, further increasing one's strength. The weakening domain's range and strength became heavier. When the other 5 saw that Guan Tianyu had been killed so easily, their faces turned pale. They looked at Su Tiong with fear in their eyes. This was the first time they had seen such a powerful Jiushuan underworld demon. They were very clear about Guan Tianyu's strength. If this underworld demon could kill Guan Tianyu in an instant, wouldn't it be close to a Demon King's strength? How could this be possible? How could such a powerful demon appear in the Jiushuan divine realm? Could it be that the Jiushuan's spiritual supremacy made a mistake? The 5 of them didn't dare to fight anymore. They gathered together and retreated near Zhu Xiaoyu. How could Su Hao be so powerful? Even with the combined strength of the 7 of us, we can't even hurt him. A delicate and pretty girl among the 5 said with disbelief in her eyes. This girl was the head disciple of the Qiansong Empire's Qilin medicine, Li Lingyu. She was in the early Void Refinement stage, and her strength was comparable to a late Void Refinement stage cultivator. After Guan Tianyu died, she was the strongest. Exhausting oneself isn't that strong, but it's born with the weakening domain, which is effective on anyone. It's a weakened version of the power of law, and it's irresistible. Anyone who stays in the weakening domain will be greatly weakened, and it's unavoidable. Right now, we can't even use 1% of our usual strength, so how can we fight that beast? A tall and sturdy young man next to Li Lingyu replied with a dejected expression. The tall and sturdy young man was Zhu Mao, a genius who was heavily nurtured by the Heavenly Gate flying shuttle. He was in the early void refinement stage, and his strength was around the middle void refinement stage. The other three participants were far weaker than these two. They were so scared that they couldn't speak. The spirit chi in their bodies was also depleting at a shocking speed. Just when the three of them thought that they were about to be killed by Su Hao turned around and flew down. Su Hao suddenly changed his target and targeted Feng Buji and the others. He swooped down, and the bone spear in his hand swept across. These weak participants couldn't resist at all. More than half of Feng Buji's group were killed or injured. The originally difficult situation fell into despair. The two parties who were originally enemies were now the pot calling the kettle black. No one was in a better state. They had become the prey that the king of the dead swamp, Su Hao, played with. Young mistress, are you still not going to make a move? Feng Buji flew into the sky and asked in confusion, "Why should I make a move?" Zhu Xiaoyu asked curiously, "Young mistress, haven't you always been looking for a strong opponent? Isn't Su Hao's weakening domain worthy of your attention?" Feng Buji asked again. "His strength is barely passable. Big brother Buji, you've changed. You've become a coward. Do you want me to help you?" Zhu Xiaoyu saw through Feng Buji's thoughts. "Young mistress, it doesn't matter if you help me or not. Are you not going to help your companion who came with you?" Feng Buji didn't give up. His strength hadn't recovered yet. He was no match for Su Hao. "Companion?" Zhu Xiaoyu tilted her head and looked at Feng Buji with a smile. "I don't have a companion." Feng Buji was stunned. He looked at Li Ling, Jade, and the other four. They all looked embarrassed. As they spoke, the group of participants from the Ankuan Empire who followed Feng Buji into the dead swamp were all killed and devoured by Su Hao. Only Xiaoying and Feng Buji were left. Whoosh! After eating his fill, Su Chao licked the corner of his lips and flew up from below. He looked at the remaining people in the void as if he had not had enough yet. Su Hao rubbed his stomach and looked at the others. "Appetizers. Next, it's time for the main course." Li Ling, Jade, and the other four looked at each other. They were hoping that Zhu Xiaoyu could protect them. However, after listening to the conversation between Zhu Xiaoyu and Feng Buji, they knew that this mischievous young mistress was unreliable. "Run!" Zhu Mao hurriedly transmitted his voice. The five of them didn't hesitate and turned to run. One of the participants was very close to Xiao Ying and grabbed her. "Why are you bringing her with you?" Another participant was confused. "If a tiger wants to eat meat, just let it eat. Won't that buy us some time?" The person who grabbed Xiao Ying revealed a sinister look. "Nice one." The person who asked gave him a thumbs up. The five of them had just escaped when Su Hao flashed and appeared in their escape route. His speed was so fast that it was as if he had teleported. The contestant who had grabbed Xiao Ying was so shocked that he subconsciously flung her towards Su Xuan. Slap! A large hand suddenly appeared and grabbed the contestant's wrist. Before the five of them could recover from Su Hao's threat, they were shocked again. A handsome young man in a purple robe appeared out of thin air in front of them without any warning. Chapter 837. The contestant who had grabbed onto Xiao Ying and wanted to use her as bait to stall for time was confused. The purple-robed young man was Li Daocheng, who had rushed over. At this moment, his eyes were cold and his entire body was surging with killing intent. When the extremely weak Xiao Ying saw Li Daocheng, who had suddenly appeared, a light smile appeared on her face. Xiao Ying wanted to call out to her master, but could not make a sound. She did not have any strength left in her body. After being injured, the weakening domain's effect on Xiao Ying had increased exponentially. She could not resist at all, and her originally small amount of strength was quickly drained away. "Who are you? Let go of me." The contestant was stunned for a moment before he questioned. Li Daocheng did not even look at that person. He used his divine perception to scan Xiao Ying's body. After confirming that there were no fatal injuries, his heart calmed down. Without Li Daocheng's strength, that person let go of Xiao Ying's hand and flew back dozens of meters in fear. Li Daocheng caught Xiao Ying and placed one hand on her back. A stream of pure spirit energy flowed continuously into Xiao Ying's body. Li Daochong had not used qi channeling healing technique for a while. However, as his cultivation increased, his technique became more refined. Xiao Ying's injuries were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while, her broken arm and external injuries had disappeared. Li Daochong took out a pill and fed it to Xiao Ying. Throughout the entire process, everyone's eyes were focused on Li Daochong. Zhu Xiaoyu's eyes were filled with interest. Master, be careful. That Jiuxuan underworld demon is very strange. It's not easy to deal with him. Xiao Ying, who had recovered, looked cautiously at Su, who had stopped for some reason, and transmitted her voice to Li Daochong. Li Daochong looked at Xiao Ying and nodded slightly. How do you feel now? Xiao Ying moved her body and arms and said, I'm fine now. Li Daochong's lips curled up slightly. That's good. Go, kill all the people who held you hostage. Don't leave a single one alive. Murderous intent flashed in Xiao Ying's eyes when she heard this. She said respectfully to Li Daochong, yes. Whoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Ying disappeared. The contestant who was holding Xiao Ying hostage saw a shadow flash in front of him, and then a long saber fell from the sky. Zong! That competitor didn't even have time to react before he was split into two halves. This person wasn't even as strong as Ru Shaoxing, so how could he block Xiao Ying's attack? Under the effect of the laceration effect, his body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood. Then, he disappeared and went to the resurrection point. Xiao Ying slashed down, and she disappeared again. The other contestant was also killed before he could react. In the blink of an eye, only 3 of the 8 contestants who came with Zhu Xiaoyu were left. Guan Tianyu, Guan Xiaoxiao, and Zhu Mao. The 3 of them were the strongest among the 8 contestants, excluding Ru Shaoxing. However, the 3 of them were shocked. Guan Tianyu's divine telekinesis had been probing the purple-robed youth's strength. However, Guan Tianyu couldn't break through the purple-robed youth's divine telekinesis barrier. Seeing Xiao Ying kill 2 people in seconds, Guan Tianyu's face darkened. Just as he was about to say something, he felt a chill on his back. Guan Tianyu swung the Dragon Emperor Moon encompassing blade. Clang! There was an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding. Xiao Ying appeared and flew back dozens of meters. Guan Tianyu also flew back dozens of meters before he could stop himself. Guan Xiaoxiao and Zhu Mao looked at each other, then attacked Xiao Ying at the same time. 2 against 1. It was a chaotic battle. Guan Tianyu looked at Li Daochong and couldn't help but ask, Friend, which cultivation company are you from? Can you tell me your name? Li Daochong said leisurely, Why do people ask me that everywhere I go? Do you all like to check my background? Seeing that he couldn't get an answer, Guan Tianyu didn't pursue the matter and changed the topic. Friend, this isn't the time for us contestants to fight among ourselves. Do you want that Jiuxuan monster to reap the benefits? Li Daochong stood with his hands behind his back and floated in the air. His eyes were clear as he said disapprovingly, Fight among ourselves? Don't you think that's funny? Didn't you guys start fighting among yourselves a long time ago? Did the contestants from the Kuan Empire say anything when they ganged up on them? Guan Tianyu was stunned. He looked at Li Daochong from head to toe. You're from the Kuan Empire? Li Daochong didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Zhu Xiaoyu. When he arrived, he felt an indescribable, strange, spiritual aura. He didn't expect the owner of this strange, spiritual aura to be a petite girl. Zhu Xiaoyu also looked at Li Daochong with interest. She was curious about this strange young man who came out of nowhere. Other than the 3 monsters, there was someone among the younger generation of the human realm that she couldn't see through. In terms of combat power, Zhu Xiaoyu knew that she might not be a match for the 3 monsters. However, in terms of spiritual sense, she wasn't afraid of anyone. She could even hold her own against a tribulation old monster. However, Zhu Xiaoyu couldn't break through the spiritual sense barrier of this purple-robed young man. Even if you're from the Kuan Empire, you should think about the bigger picture. Everyone knows who the real enemy is. Let's get rid of that monster first. It's not too late for us to settle this later, Guan Tianyu said confidently when he saw that Li Daochong didn't say anything. It's none of your business how I do things, Li Daochong scoffed. A sound wave whizzed out. Guan Tianyu groaned. The blood in his body was boiling. He almost couldn't breathe and spat out a mouthful of blood. You! Guan Tianyu was furious. Kid, are you helping the monster fight against the human realm cultivators? Li Daochong's eyes flashed coldly. Using his fingertip as a blade, he sliced through the air. Whoosh! A purple light flashed through the air. Guan Tianyu didn't react at all. Whoosh! A green ray of light shot out from behind Guan Tianyu. Bang! The purple light and the ray of light collided. They canceled each other out and dissipated a few meters in front of Guan Tianyu. Guan Tianyu's face was pale. He didn't move at all during the whole process. It wasn't because he was frozen, but because he didn't know what happened. If it wasn't for Zhu Xiaoyu, Guan Tianyu would have been destroyed by the purple light and sent to the respawn point. Li Daochong's and Zhu Xiaoyu's gazes met in the void once again. Sparks flew silently. Thank you for saving me. Mississippi, Guan Tianyu regained his senses and quickly thanked Zhu Xiaoyu with a bow. No need to thank me. I've never liked arrogant people. I didn't save you. Zhu Xiaoyu didn't care. Brat, do you know who I am? How dare you attack me? Guan Tianyu was furious as he glared at Li Daochong. As he spoke, Void, who hadn't moved since Li Daochong's appearance, finally moved. Void silently flew behind Li Daochong. Seeing this, Guan Tianyu sneered and scoffed. Humph. That's what you get for being so arrogant. Void attacked you. Let's see how you deal with this. Guan Xiao, who was fighting with Xiao Wing, added, Your friend is being targeted by Void. Aren't you going to help? Xiao Wing swung her sword. Don't worry about him. Take my sword first. You don't know what's good for you. You'll regret it later. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Don't you know such a simple principle? Right now, our common enemy is Void. You and gun contestants are really stubborn. No wonder everyone is chasing after you. You deserve it. Guan Xiao mocked as she blocked the attack. Zhu Mao, who had attacked Xiao Ying together with Guan Xiao, spoke up as well. Xiao, why bother with them? If they don't seek death, they won't die. They're treating our good intentions as ill intent. Just let them be. Su Qiao is about to make his move again, and that violet-robed youth will soon start crying. As long as Su Qiao attacks that brat, I definitely won't help him. They spoke loudly on purpose so that everyone could hear them. At the same time, they also sent a message to Void. They wanted to tell Void that no one would help him if he attacked the purple-shirted young man first. Everything went as they wished. Void flew toward the purple-shirted young man. Soon, he was behind the purple-shirted young man. Void raised his hand. Guan Tianyu's sneer deepened as he waited for Void to attack. However, in the next moment, the sneer on Guan Tianyu's face froze as his mouth opened wide. Void raised his hand and bowed. Master, these people are blabbering on and on. Do you want me to eat them alive for some peace? Void said. The surroundings went dead silent. Other than Zhu Xiaoyu, everyone looked at Li Daochong in disbelief with their mouths agape. It was as if a demon had descended and was determined to kill everyone present. It was a terrifying Void. He actually addressed the purple-shirted young man as his master. Even Sir God Hacker was no exception. His eyes were filled with shock as he could not understand what was going on. Are you a human or a ghost? Sir God Hacker could not help but ask. That question reminded everyone present. Void was a Jiuquan demon. Why would he bow down to a human cultivator and be willing to be a follower? Could it be that the purple-shirted young man was also a Jiuquan demon? Could it be that he was a Jiuquan demon who was even stronger than Void? The air seemed to have frozen as everyone began to suspect Li Daochong's identity. As for the person involved, he did not care at all. He nodded his chin slightly and acquiesced to Void's request. Void licked his lips, and then a red light flashed in his eyes. If Li Daochong had not appeared, he would have eaten the main course. Void did not dare to attack without knowing the situation as soon as his master arrived. Now that he had received permission, there was nothing to worry about. Void's figure flashed. Zhu Mao, who was fighting with Xiao Ying, did not have time to react before his chest was pierced by a sharp demon claw. He looked down unwillingly and saw that his battle achievements had been sucked dry. Under a big mask, half of his body was swallowed. Zhu Mao blacked out and went to the resurrection point. When Guan Xiaoxiao saw that, she was so scared that her face turned pale. She was not in the mood to fight with Xiao Ying anymore. She let out a scream and turned around to run. But as soon as she turned around, Void's ferocious face appeared before her. A tentacle-like vine pierced Guan Xiaoxiao's head. In less than 2 seconds, Guan Xiaoxiao also disappeared into the void and went to the resurrection point. Guan Tianyu was frozen in the air like a statue as he watched his companion being killed by Su Fei. His mind was blank. Guan Tianyu looked at Void in fear and then turned to Li Daocheng. The fear in his eyes grew stronger. Then Guan Tianyu let out a long howl and roared, "I'll fight you to the death. Isn't it just going to the resurrection point? Let's go together." As he spoke, the spirit energy around Guan Tianyu exploded and spread. Detonate the primordial spirit. Feng Buji, who had been silent for a long time, exclaimed. The power of a void refinement cultivator's primordial spirit was enough to destroy a large cultivation planet. Pucci, you won't have the chance. Void's voice sounded. The demon claw drilled into Guan Tianyu's back and came out from his chest. The demon claw grabbed Guan Tianyu's spirit core and pulled out his primordial spirit. The demon claw retracted and Void swallowed Guan Tianyu's spirit core and primordial spirit. Chapter 838. Guan Tianyu was considered the strongest among all the contestants and was at the top of the pyramid. However, he didn't even have the chance to fight back before being killed by Su Tianyu. The 8 contestants that came with Zhu Xiaoyu were all sent to the resurrection point. None of them were left. Zhu Xiaoyu and Sir God Hacker were the only ones left in the void that was filled with people a moment ago. On the other side, Xiao Ying and Li Daocheng were together, while Feng Buji was alone at the far end. He was still extremely weak. Feng Buji looked at Li Daocheng in a daze. He felt an inexplicable fear towards this unknown guy. Feng Buji had only experienced such a feeling when he was facing those 3 monsters. Even a monster like Zhu Xiaoyu didn't make Feng Buji feel fearful. Misty, could this person be a Demon King-level monster from the Jiuquan World of Gods? Otherwise, why would Su Tianyu call him master? Sir God Hacker was confused. He's not a Jiuquan monster. If I'm not wrong, he's the person the Talisman of Wonders is looking for, Zhu Xiaoyu grinned. What? Sir God Hacker was shocked. Misty, are you saying that he's Li Daocheng? That should be it, Zhu Xiaoyu nodded. Sir God Hacker looked at Li Daocheng in shock. He couldn't believe that the guy who had been wanted for the past 2 months would be so powerful. There was still some doubt in his eyes. As the 2 of them were talking, Su Tianyu didn't attack immediately. Instead, he continued to strengthen his weakening domain. He enveloped Zhu Xiaoyu and Sir God Hacker tightly as the weakening domain was pushed to the extreme. Su Tianyu already knew that the 2 of them were the hardest to deal with among all the contestants. This was because they weren't affected by the weakening domain at all. Sir God Hacker, who had been fighting against the weakening domain, suddenly felt his body relax as his spiritual energy was drained at an alarming speed. He couldn't withstand the weakening domain's attack. Damn it! Sir God Hacker gritted his teeth and cursed. Misty, that monster has devoured so many people and has become much stronger. I can't hold on any longer. Leave first and wait for me outside the swamp, Zhu Xiaoyu said. Well, miss, I'm under orders to protect you. How can I leave first? If the spiritual sage knows, he will punish me. Sir God Hacker was stunned. So you're saying that you can disobey my orders? Hurry up and leave, or I'll kick you out. Zhu Xiaoyu's voice turned cold. Sir God Hacker's heart skipped a beat as he felt the killing intent from Zhu Xiaoyu. He couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Once the eldest Miss Temper flared up, she wouldn't even recognize her own family. Sir God Hacker, who knew Zhu Xiaoyu's temperament well, didn't dare to say anything more. He sighed inwardly and didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately turned around and flew away. You want to run? Hee hee, do you think that's possible? Su Tuo laughed maliciously, his figure disappearing as if he had teleported. Crack, crack. As soon as the void disappeared, green lightning flashed in the void. Su Lao only felt numb for a moment. When he reappeared, he had only moved less than 30 meters away. They could only watch as Sir God Hacker flew away and disappeared into the horizon. You bastard, do you really think you're invincible? Zhu Xiaoyu's voice was still sweet, but there was a hint of coldness in it. The Jiuxuan devil chi in Su Lao's body moved, and the green lightning around his body dissipated. A dark red glow flashed in Su Lao's eyes. The weakening domain was compressed several times and concentrated within 100 meters around Zhu Xiaoyu. Ordinary cultivators, even those at the peak of the combination realm, would be corroded by the weakening domain within a few seconds. Only a dried corpse would be left. However, Zhu Xiaoyu floated in the air as if nothing had happened. She looked at Su Lao with interest, and her eyes were full of mockery. Is that all you've got? You've disappointed me. Zhu Xiaoyu shook her head. Su Lao's eyes were filled with anger. The Jiuxuan devil chi surged out violently. 2 bone spurs appeared in his hands, and more than 10 bone spurs extended from his back. How dare you underestimate me? Die. Blade of the Void, destroy. Su Lao roared. More than a dozen bone spikes shot out like lightning, and he disappeared without a trace. Zhu Xiaoyu's lips curled up slightly, but her eyes were still filled with disappointment. A bamboo flute had appeared beside her lips. She blew on it lightly. A melodious flute sound floated out. The music was like a language, as if it was telling a sad but beautiful love story. Listening to it, one's heart would be touched, and one could not help but cry. However, the seemingly harmless flute sound brought about an incomparably powerful spiritual wave. The bone spurs that shot over disintegrated instantly, turning into powder and dissipating. When Su Lao, who had disappeared, reappeared with a pained expression. He covered his ears with both hands, and the 2 bone spurs in his hands had also turned into powder. Roar! Su Lao let out a heaven-shaking roar, like a trapped beast, and sighed toward the sky. Zhu Xiaoyu's slender, jade-like hands gently stroked the bamboo flute. Her fingertips danced lightly, and the flute sound changed slightly, becoming sharper. No! Su Lao shouted and rolled in the air. He was in extreme pain, as if he was being bitten by thousands of mosquitoes and ants. Master, save me. Su Lao cried out for help and fell to the ground. Weakness had always been the law power that Su Lao applied to others, but at this moment it was reversed. Su Lao became the weakened party, rolling on the ground and howling. He did not have any strength to resist. As long as he walked forward and gently slashed, Su Lao would be easily killed. Zhu Xiaoyu's fingertips danced faster and faster on the flute holes. Every beat increased Su Lao's pain. Not only was Su Lao in pain, but Xiao Ying and Feng Buji were also in great pain. The two covered their ears and struggled to maintain a floating state. Li Daochong frowned slightly. His spiritual force surged like a tide, and an invisible barrier appeared. Xiao Ying, who was covering her ears, relaxed. The buzzing in her head disappeared, and the burning sensation in her essence spirit also disappeared. Huff, huff. Xiao Ying gasped for breath, as if she had just experienced a life and death battle. She had consumed a lot of her energy. Thank you, Master. Li Daochong only said, "Stay in my spiritual force barrier and don't move." That female cultivator's divine ability is very strange. Even I can't see through it. Okay. Xiao Ying nodded. Li Daochong's eyes flashed with purple light as he activated his Heavenly Thunder Essence Spirit. Heavenly Thunder Art, Eye of Lightning Punishment. Boom! 2 purple lightning bolts shot out from his eyes and blasted toward Zhu Xiaoyu. Zhu Xiaoyu's eyes flashed. The bamboo flute in her hand flashed with green light, and all the spiritual sounds gathered together. The formless spiritual sounds actually took form. Boom! Two terrifying divine abilities collided in the middle of Zhu Xiaoyu and Li Daochong, resulting in a shocking explosion. There were no shock waves or explosions. The two divine abilities canceled each other out and dissipated. Li Daochong was secretly shocked. His eye of lightning punishment had always been domineering and fierce. Once it was released, there was no way to block it. Especially when dealing with Dark Ghost, it had almost never failed. Even if it didn't kill him, it would definitely make his opponent suffer. This was the first time it was completely canceled out by another divine ability. Heavenly Thunder was condensed from the spirit realm's law of punishment. Its power was unimaginable. For this petite female cultivator to be able to release a divine ability that was on par with it, she probably had a powerful background. Xiaoying, do you know who she is? Li Daochong couldn't help but ask. Xiaoying immediately replied, Master, Disciple has stayed in this area for a long time and has never seen this woman. However, Disciple has heard that the person with the most contributions in Imperial Capital number 3 is a female cultivator called Zhu Xiaoyu. She is the daughter of a spirit paragon and the only direct descendant of a spirit paragon under the age of 30 in the human realm spirit realm. It can only be her, Li Daochong said leisurely. Li Daochong wasn't the only one who was shocked. Zhu Xiaoyu's heart also jumped. Her heavenly spirit divine voice had been broken just like that. This was an immortal-level divine ability. Even a body integration old demon couldn't withstand it. It was one of the 3 divine abilities her father had given her. 3 years ago, when she used this move on Han Pe, it was quite effective. Zhu Xiaoyu put down her bamboo flute and smiled at Li Daochong. Hee, you're very strong. You finally found an opponent. Li Daochong narrowed his eyes. You're not bad either. Below, Su Tuo's face was filled with fear. He was already unlucky enough to encounter an extremely perverted purple-robed cultivator. He didn't expect another perverted female cultivator. Just now, he was almost shattered by the sound wave. Su Tuo didn't dare to stay any longer. Taking advantage of the confrontation between the two, he wanted to sneak away. Just as Su Tuo moved, a bamboo leaf streaked across the sky. Zong! Su Tuo's abdomen was pierced. You want to run after eating? Zhu Xiaoyu's voice sounded. Fairy, please spare me. I'm willing to return all my contributions. Su Tuo begged for mercy. Do I look like someone who lacks battle contributions? Zhu Xiaoyu's voice turned colder. Even in the Jiuquan divine world, where the netherworld items were different from the outside world, it couldn't reduce Zhu Xiaoyu's hatred for all netherworld items. With that said, Zhu Xiaoyu waved her jade-like hand. Bamboo leaves drifted down like rain. Each leaf seemed harmless, but was as sharp as a blade. They swept through the world and danced in the sky. Everywhere one looked, there were bamboo leaves. The entire sky was covered by green bamboo leaves, turning it into a blue sky. Azure Sky Domain. Su Tuo was shocked. His eyes were filled with despair. He felt that death was inevitable. At that moment, a purple light flashed like lightning. A purple saber appeared out of nowhere and streaked across the sky. The saber cut through the blue sky. What? Zhu Xiaoyu exclaimed. Li Daochong floated in the air. He didn't seem to be moving. He only had one thought to activate the purple mystic saber. He chanted, 9 split saber art, 9 split slash. Heaven, earth, the sun, and stars could all be slashed, let alone a mere Azure Sky Domain. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.